All right, so please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, tonight's one of those special nights at our village board meetings where we get to do the Arlington Police Department Commendation Awards. It's that one night when we get to hear about all the amazing things that especially noteworthy things, not all the amazing things, but some of the most noteworthy things from the last year or so that our police department's done. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Chief.
Yes, Mayor. Thanks everyone for giving us this opportunity. I just want to start out by thanking each member of the department, the ones that you see here today, as well as everybody else for their continued hard work over the past year. Each day there's instances where our officers demonstrate the qualities and traits that make them great police officers, and it shows through the way that they impact the community. I've seen and continue to see tremendous dedication, courage, and professionalism each day that each member displays. And I often receive emails, cards, and comments from the community with gratitude towards all of you for what you do. So I am truly proud of each of you. And with that being said, I'd just like to recognize the following officers who will be receiving commendations this evening. So if I call your name, if you could just come up to the front and receive your commendation. We're going to start with Police Officer Ryan Burnett. This is for the Meritorious Police Duty Medal. On May 28, 2022, Police Officer Ryan Burnett conducted a routine traffic stop on a vehicle which had failed to stop for a red traffic signal. Subsequent to the traffic stop, Officer Burnett conducted a brief investigation of the operator and determined her to have an active arrest warrant out of the state of North Carolina for felony murder of a child. On confirmation of the warrant, P.O. Burnett took the suspect into custody safely and without further incident. She was ultimately extradited to North Carolina and is awaiting trial for first-degree murder of a child. The Meritorious Police Duty Medal is awarded for demonstrating brave and intelligent police service, presented to Police Officer Ryan Burnett. Lieutenant Michael Morano, Lieutenant Kevin Johnson, Detective John Nairati, Officer Thomas DeCampoli, and Officer Ryan Burnett. You see it there, I'll grab them. This is from March 27th, 2023. The assigned members that you see here in front of you assisted numerous police agencies in the pursuit of a stolen vehicle. That stolen vehicle contained an unattended infant at the time of the theft. Lieutenant Michael Morano, Lieutenant Kevin Johnson, Detective John Nairati, Officer Thomas DeCampoli, and Officer Burnett responded immediately and assisted with the recovery of the kidnapped child and the subsequent search for the two suspects. This award is for excellent police duty and is awarded for demonstrating valuable, intelligent, and investigative skills and is presented to these members. Thank you. Detective Sergeant John Mark Rollier, Police Officer Estefania Mejia, and Police Officer Patrick Garvey. On March 27, 2023, after a quick response and investigation of an activated commercial burglar alarm, Detective Sergeant John Mark Rollier, Police Officer Estefania Mejia, and Police Officer Patrick Garvey successfully identified and arrested 3 suspects for second-degree burglary. Subsequent to further investigation, they determined that 2 of the suspects had also committed previously unsolved burglary within the confines of the village of Irvington. The Excellent Police Duty Medal is awarded for demonstrating valuable, intelligent, investigative skills and is presented to these members. Thanks. Police Officer Thomas DeCampley, Police Officer Patrick Garvey. November 13th, 2022. After responding to a medical aid call, police officers Thomas DeCampley and Patrick Garvey came upon an unresponsive male. Identifying this as a cardiac arrest situation, these officers immediately initiated life-saving measures, including CPR and the use of an AED. Subsequent to their skillful administration of these life-saving measures, the male was successfully resuscitated and transported to a local hospital for further treatment. The life-saving medal is awarded to police officers Thomas DeCampley and Patrick Garvey for demonstrating keen observation skills and applying immediate medical aid, which resulted in the saving of a life. The next award is for DWI enforcement. The DWI enforcement award is presented for outstanding proficiency and excellence in driving while intoxicated arrests and prosecutions. Police Officer Omar Oviedo, please come forward. Police Officer Omar Oviedo, with the highest number of successful driving while intoxicated arrests in the preceding 12 months, is recognized as a leader in DWI enforcement. Your commitment to dedication to combating drunk and impaired driving are unwavering and is very much appreciated. This DWI Enforcement Award will be presented to you for your outstanding proficiency and excellence in driving while intoxicated arrests and prosecutions. Thanks, Omar. Police Officer Anthony DiNardo. This is an honorable mention award for the calendar year of 2022. During the calendar year of 2022, the Irvington Police Department was notified by the administrators of a local facility specializing in the care of displaced children of the exceptional service and dedication of Police Officer Anthony DiNardo and his efforts towards improving the lives of youths under their care. Through those efforts, Police Officer DiNardo developed a unique and special relationship with one young resident, offering guidance and support during a time of great difficulty. With this certificate, Police Officer DiNardo is recognized for his selfless acts of kindness and compassion. An honorable mention certificate is awarded to Police Officer Anthony DiNardo for performing routine police duties in an outstanding manner. And that's the conclusion of the police awards.
Well, thank you, Chief. Congratulations to all the awardees. It's great to see some of the newer hires have obviously hit the ground running and have been overrepresented this year in the awards. So that's it's great to see, as well as some of the old guys as well. You guys are still working hard, but it is a special night. We want to thank all of you, not just for the heroic acts or the kind acts that you are being awarded for tonight, but also the mundane nights, the rainy Thanksgiving Eve when you're not with your family, the Sunday when it's, you miss Mother's Day, which is top of mind, I'm sure, for someone in this room. But, there's just so many times when you're away from your families. And I just want to let you know that as a board and as a village, we really appreciate it. We understand the sacrifice. We can't really understand the sacrifice, but we can imagine what it's like. And we just want to thank you, not just for your heroic and selfless acts that are being awarded tonight, but for everything you do every day. So thank you all very much. And stop by anytime of our meetings. You're always welcome. But thanks very much, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Good job. Next up, we have announcements. The first announcement is that Memorial Day ceremonies and parade will be on Monday, May 29th, 2023 at 10 a.m., starting at the Main Street Memorials. I am happy to say that the parade is going to be, even larger than last year's, which was obviously the first one back after the pandemic, that showed kind of some of the efforts that had gone into pre-pandemic to kind of bring back the parade. So hopefully a lot of people can show up to the parade and cheer on believe we're going to have over 20 sailors from Fleet Week come up and march with us, so that should be fun on its own. And then, obviously the local Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and a whole bunch of people are going to be marching. And obviously the ceremonies are important. That's really why we do it. But we'd love to see a lot of people here at 10 a.m. On Memorial Day. Another exciting or interesting, remarkable event is going to be the unveiling of Yesterday, which is commemorates the enslaved residents of what became Irvington. This has been a project that's been ongoing. It's been probably worked on for 4 or 5 years. So to have it actually come to fruition on Saturday, June 10th at 11 a.m. We're meeting at Madam C.J. Walker Plaza here at 85 Main Street. I think everyone's going to, be very moved by seeing it in person. If what we've seen so far is any, indication, as well as, the important discussions that will come from when people, see that there for forever. So Saturday, June 10th, 11 a.m., Madam C.J. Walker Plaza, Yesterday unveiling and dedication. Put that in your calendars as well. Next up is a public hearing to consider local law amending Chapter 148 with respect to gas-powered leaf blowers. That's for Monday, June 5th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in Village Hall. This is really a tweak to the current law to help with enforcement. It's not really, we already obviously have a law on the books. This is just really tweaking it to, when we met last Wednesday, the police chief expressed some concerns about how they could enforce the law, and we want to make sure that's being enforced the way we intended. So I'd like to get a motion to have a public hearing to consider local law amending Chapter 148 with respect to gas-powered leaf blowers for Monday, June 5th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in Village Hall. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then lastly, we had checks over over $25,000. I believe there were 2. First one was to those guys, landscaping for various curbs, pathways, and catch basin repair projects. That was from general and capital funds in the amount of $32,567.52. Then we also had one to Pacific Trans Global Construction Corp for emergency repair of the town hall roof drains. That was from the general fund. That was for $58,490.32. I believe that's related also to the Tiffany room work. That was some of the
Yes, 100%.
So hopefully that'll be completed soon.
It's completed, but there's some finish work that has to be done. But the drains themselves
It's
are
not
intact.
leaking anymore,
Yeah.
Great. So it'd be nice to have that open again soon. Next up, we had correspondence. I'd say I kind of put these in 2 buckets. One is kind of for the Route 9 Complete Streets project, which, is kind of they basically, I think they reached out and asked people to talk about why they think it's important for the New York State Department of Transportation to do a great job in the Route 9 Complete Streets project. I actually had a count, but I can't remember, but there are about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I guess 5 or 6 different families reached out to ask us to ensure that the Department of Transportation does a good job. So Mitch, I think you've read all of these. If you could bring that back to the committee that's working with them, we appreciate that. And then the other piece of correspondence is actually related to the public hearing that's coming up. So I will hold on to that from the Harshers. I guess you can hear as well. So I will move on to public comment, not about the public hearings. If there's anything, anybody at home there? No? Otherwise, I will move on to the consent agenda. Anyone have any questions? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. If I can have a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next up, I will make a motion to open public hearing requesting a special permit for adaptive reuse of the historic building, 67 North Broadway, Villa Lawaro. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Good evening,
All right.
Mayor Smith, members of the board. Jennifer Gray from Keen and Bean on behalf of the applicant. If you like, we're prepared to give a brief summary of the application. We were before you back in March and had our consultants, our parking consultants and noise consultants with us, and gave an update to the board. If you'd like us to give a brief summary again, we're happy to do that before public comment. Okay, so we are here on behalf of Villa Luaro LLC, who is the owner of 67 North Broadway, otherwise known as Villa Luaro. I'm joined here tonight by John Canning from Kimley Horn, who is our traffic consultant, also Steve Tilley and Stephanie Reinhardt from Tilley Architecture. William James, the owner's representative, is here with us as well. And I believe Mr. Richelieu Dennis, the owner, was going to join us by Zoom. Larry, is he?
Rich is on, yeah.
Rich is on. Okay, so Rich will be joining us by Zoom in a moment. So as you know, we're seeking and Alelia Bundles, relative of Madam C.J. Walker, is also with us this evening. So as you know, we're seeking approval of a special use permit for the adaptive reuse of Villa Luaro, pursuant to a specific section of your code, 224-8C, which does allow historic buildings to be adaptively reused for historical, cultural, or educational facilities. Many of you are, if not all of you, are familiar with the history of Villa Luaro, former home of Madam C.J. Walker, who was the first self-made female millionaire in the U.S., and she was a woman of color. She made her fortune by developing and marketing a line of cosmetics and hair care products, specifically for Black women, through the business that she founded called Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company. She commissioned Mr. Vertner Tandy to design and build Villa Luaro. He is the first licensed Black architect in New York. So a really rich history here. She moved into the house in 1918, and ultimately the house was listed on the National Register in 1976. So the proposed use that we are seeking to establish at Villa Luaro is the home of the Madam C.J. Walker Institute for Women of Color Entrepreneurs. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and it's dedicated to educating, empowering, and uplifting entrepreneurs of color. The proposed use will really celebrate the historical and architectural importance of this amazing building that you have in your village. Educational training for entrepreneurs will be sort of the bread and butter programming taking place at Villa Luaro. It'll include topics like financial literacy, business planning, marketing, community engagement, and other topics of interest for entrepreneurs. As you know, we first filed our application quite some time ago, back in the late summer, early fall of 2021. We proceeded to a public hearing at that time and last appeared before the board at that time in the fall of 2021. We heard comments from members of the public about parking and traffic and noise, and took a little bit of a recess to retain some experts in those fields. So we retained a traffic and parking expert, we retained a noise expert from AKRF, and commissioned studies to really get to the bottom of those comments and determine whether the scope of the application was appropriate. So through those studies, we have sort of reformed the scope of the application. So if you remember, we came in seeking a maximum guest capacity of 400 guests. At this time, our application only seeks a maximum capacity of 100, so a pretty significant reduction in the number of guests that would be allowed on site at any given time. We have Mr. Canning here, who would be happy to give a summary of the traffic report if you like. Unfortunately, our noise consultant, Christian Thompson of AKRF, is traveling overseas and could not be here tonight. I'm happy to give a summary of his report if you like. I know we went through all of that at your March meeting, but say the word and we're happy to go through it again. But in a nutshell, the traffic and parking study, through that, we are agreeing to certain limitations on the timing of events, specifically events over 30 guests at the site. So for any program or event over 30 guests, we would utilize off-site parking. 3 locations were identified back in 2021 for off-site parking, and those are the 2 churches, Irvington Presbyterian Church and the Immaculate Conception Church, as well as Mercy College. William James has reached out to all 3 of those locations recently, heard back from IPC and from Mercy College. Unfortunately, has not received a return call from ICC, but we're hopeful to get in touch with Father Ashman there to continue our engagement. Regardless, but prior to the actual scheduling of any event or program that would require off-site parking, Villa Lewaro would engage with those off-site locations, make sure that the event is scheduled on a day and time that works for that off-site location so as not to conflict with any school activities, any programming of the churches or the college. The beauty of this is Villa Lewaro is in complete control, and through the Institute, of scheduling and programming. There are events and programs that are held through the Institute, and we have complete control over those scheduling. So if Tuesday program from 10 to 4 doesn't work for an off-site location, we can change that to Thursday or Friday or have it on the weekend. So we have complete control over that. Speaking of programming, I'll just give a little bit of a summary of the statement of use that we did submit, a revised statement of use from the original application. So as I mentioned, no program or event will exceed 100 people plus 15 staff people. So 115 people maximum on site at a given time, whether it's a educational program, whether it's a fundraising event, whatever the case may be, no more than 115 individual people, guests and staff will be on site at any given time. The programming and events will require pre-registration, so there will be no surprises as far as the number of guests in attendance. We anticipate that most of the educational programming will be somewhere in the range of a maximum of 50 participants. It's obviously hard to give you a specific number there, but we anticipate that will be the average number. And we also anticipate, per our statement of use, that there'll be about 2 of those events programs per month. As far as the larger events or programs, so something more than 50, we anticipate that would be about 8 per year. And that would be a fundraiser or a larger event through the Institute. We've also allowed for tours by appointment, and we tried to fashion the tours to mimic what the board had done for the Octagon House. So a maximum of 25 people by appointment, would not be at the same time as programs, and they wouldn't be scheduled back to back. If there happened to be more than one in a day, we'd have a reasonable period of time between the tours. Now the tours, because it's a 25-person maximum, we don't anticipate needing to utilize off-site parking for the tours, so that could all be handled on site. As far as hours of operation and noise is concerned, as a result of the noise study that was performed, and the noise study studied there was measurements taken at various locations throughout the site to study the ambient noise levels. Then there were noise measurements taken during an event that occurred at the site, and AKRF applied a whole bunch of fancy calculations that are beyond my pay grade, and determined that there would be no more than 6 decibels difference in sound, ambient versus proposed condition, at the property line. And those 2 locations where there was an increase of 6 decibels was along the aqueduct, the Croton Aqueduct, where there's no residences immediately adjacent to the property line. At the other property lines, it was less. 4 was the maximum increase in noise at the property line. And of course, if noise is increased at 4 at the property line, as you get further into the property of the neighboring houses, it'll reduce from there. Now, we've never claimed, nor will we claim, that you're never going to hear an activity going on at Villa Lewaro. With any with any site that has human activity, you're going to hear people talking, you're going to hear low-level music. We will not make that representation that you're never going to hear anything going on at the site. It is our expectation, though, that the noise emitted from the site will be reasonable and will be in keeping with the character of the community, same as a 4th of July barbecue, graduation party, or a group of families gathering for dinner on a back deck. So with that, we have proposed some limitations. Sunday through Thursday, after 8 p.m., there will be no amplification of sound, whether it's music or microphone of someone speaking outside at the property. At 9 p.m., Sunday through Thursday, all events will end. There will be no events that end past 9 p.m. Friday and Saturday, there's a little bit more leeway. 10 p.m. is the cutoff for any amplification of sound or music, and 10 p.m. is also the time at which any event would conclude. So with that, again, I'm happy to have Mr. Canning come up and give a summary of the parking and traffic study if you like, but otherwise we can open it up for public comment, or we can answer any questions that you may have. I'm sorry if that was a little bit longer than a brief summary.
No, don't worry about it. Do you want to hear the topic again, or do you want to wait and see if that comes up during the public hearing?
My question was mainly about the numbers. And so should I ask now or should I wait?
You can ask your questions. You start first.
I'm gonna start first. So I read the report from March and I looked it over again today. And what I'm just trying to understand is if somebody lived in Villa Lawaro and it wasn't this use, 4 decibels at the property line, is that the kind of thing? I didn't see it in there, and if I missed it, I'm sorry, but like, let's say there was a family living there and they had a barbecue and had some people over. Is that similar to that, or is that more, or is that less?
So what was studied by AKRF, there were 3 scenarios that were studied. One of those scenarios was 100 guests at the carriage house with outdoors with amplification of sound. Another scenario that was studied was 100 guests at the back patio. And then the other scenario that was studied was everybody inside. Now, with those various scenarios, the decibel limits that I discussed earlier were the results. So there would be no more than a maximum of an increase in 6 decibels at the property line adjacent to the Croton Aqueduct, and no more than 4 decibels at, and I can check the study, but I can't recall if it was the north property line or the south property line.
So that's 100 people.
That's it, with 100 people, yes.
But we don't know how, like, so let's say there were 20 people there. Do we know what kind of, is that a big difference? Is it the amplification go by the number of people, or does it go by what's going through? Do you see what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to, the number of people have an impact on how much sound there is. I
anticipate that the answer is yes, but I would need my noise consultant to answer that question with more scientific specificity.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions now, or should we go right now?
Yeah, I guess I have a couple of questions. So in terms of the institute, does it currently operate now?
There have been programs held by the Institute. I believe during COVID over Zoom, there were several programs that were held.
In-person events, yeah.
Educational programming by the Institute, no in-person events at Villa Lawaro.
Right, but we have had some events, but not institutional.
Yeah. So the in-person events, I don't even mean that the line I'm just talking about. I'm just trying to get a sense for how long has it been in operation, the Institute?
Right. I don't have that date off the top of my head, but I can certainly,
10 years,
more than
2 years.
more than 2
More
years.
than 2 years.
Correct.
And then you've had some, I assume the idea would be to grow it, right? Like any organization like that, I think you seek to grow it. So
Sure.
I'm just curious to know, like, from the events that you've had in person, sort of what's the number? Like what's your target programming, let's say?
Sure. So as far as programs at Villa Lawaro, I think our sweet spot, our target programming is about 50 guests to attend the programs. There will be some smaller programs where there's only 20. There will be, larger programs where there's 70. But I think sort of the average that we're looking at is about 50 guests.
So it is average 50, that sort of takes you into the off-site parking more often than not.
Yeah, but at this time, we're only proposing 2 of those programs per month. So it's not a daily event. It's not the programming that's going to occur Monday through Friday, 12 months a year. This is much more infrequent programming than that.
I had a couple of questions. One,
Sure.
I want to compliment you for addressing many of the things that have come up back in 2021. The noise study that talks about a scenario of an indoor-outdoor event at the Carriage House with 100 guests and 15 staff, is that the Carriage House that's directly on the neighbor's property?
That's the one right at the property line, correct.
Right, and how do you envision 100 guests at that I would assume that they'd be spread out, and I just remember that one of the concerns that the board had was that when the Carriage House had been used, it was particularly noisy and noxious for the neighbors.
Sure.
Given that it was actually on their property, that was one of the things that we had brought up as a concern. So I'm just curious as to why there's a 100-person event at the Carriage House.
We are not specifically proposing to have an event of 100 guests solely at the Carriage House. That was a scenario chosen, sort of a worst-case scenario by AKRF to just demonstrate what the maximum potential could be for noise and to see what the results at the Croton Aqueduct, right?
Right in that corner where the Carriage House and the Aqueduct.
I believe that's correct. But again, that's not something that we're proposing as far as our programming scheme is concerned.
And my other question, and forgive me if I don't see the answer, but I remember that there were concerns about fire access with the parking scheme, I don't mean to say scheme, with the parking plan that had been drawn up, how it was, pretty close on one side and we weren't sure. So has this been run by the Irvington Fire Department for safety and access?
I know Tilly Architecture has been in communication with the building department, and I believe was attempting to have a meeting with the fire department as well. Steve, has that meeting with the fire department occurred?
No, we haven't had a meeting with the fire department. We used the radii, and we're also actually making changes at the entrance and exit. That's going to facilitate emergency egress as well as daily and event traffic.
I only had one very easy question, but do you know about how many people were at the Pierre Moss event for that?
Oh, gosh. Much more than was expected,
Yeah,
I can
so
tell you
that's-
that.
For me, I think that'd be an interesting comparison, because I was trying to estimate in my mind, and I'm always terrible when I do that. So, I don't know. Yeah, so we don't have a.
I don't have a number for you.
Yeah, I think, I was guessing like 500 or something like that.
Between 4 and 5, I would suspect.
Yeah, that's probably a reasonable number. Certainly much more than we're proposing as far as the special
Right.
permit
I
is
think that's
concerned, I
one
can
of the
tell you
other
that.
things is I know a lot of people brought up the Octagon House, and I think one big difference is that when you guys have special events, you're actually going to come and alert the village, and
Right.
the Octagon House doesn't currently do that as far as I'm aware. I think they kind of view it as they have their special permit use, and then this is also a house, so they can have parties and things like that. So I think it's great that you guys kind of proposed to have, a cap. I mean, we obviously insisted on a cap as well, but as well as notifications, because I've been at several big events at the Octagon House, and as far as I know, I never approved anything as a board. And I don't
Brian, I
think
thought you were looking at me like you've been in events at the house.
I've been at events at your house as well.
Thank you.
But, so I think that
I haven't, what is it?
Sorry.
you don't live on Riverview.
You don't live on Riverview, sorry.
But, so I think that's an interesting, and I think material difference from the way the Octagon House special permits operated right now. Is that
You know, and I think a lot of it is because, you know, there was kind of a large event that happened and, you know, the neighbors are concerned, so we're kind of responding to that. But I know I've been at least 2 events that had, you know, well over 100 people, probably closer to 500 people.
The one that we were both at was.
Yeah, that was a large one. And then we also, there was the Historical Society actually had their annual fundraiser there outside. And there was, you know, it was a big event. It's a big event. It's obviously a different setup, but it was still a big event. So I just want to point that out as a big difference in the special permits, that you guys are calling out your special events, and they don't. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I think with that, except if anybody else has any questions now, you can open it up to the public.
Yeah, and I know at some point, Mr. Dennis would
Yeah,
like
did
to
you
say a
wanna-
few words as well. Mr. Dennis, I don't know if you want to say a few words now or when we conclude after the public comments, whatever your preference is. I don't know if you heard me.
He's muted.
But he's not talking, he's not here.
Looks like he's frozen. Yeah, I'm not sure.
So maybe we'll do that at the end.
Okay.
I don't want to hold you up. Okay, thank you.
Sure. I know the Harshers are here. I have your letter, but I don't know if you'd rather speak than, it's always better to hear from you guys than have me read.
Eric Smith, Board of Trustees, appreciate your time and dedication to the village. I'm Judd Harsher. This is my wife Kathy. We live next to Villa Loire, just south of the property. We've submitted a letter at the end of last week that my wife would like to share again with you. And then at the end, I just have a couple other comments.
Before I do that, the Octagon House event that you guys have attended, do they have a DJ outside? Was there a band playing outside? I'm just curious.
It was speeches, so they had amplified sound for an hour of people talking.
And the property there, the proximity to homes is a little bit grander. I think there's more of a buffer.
Different setup, sure.
So yes, if you could bear with me, I'm gonna read the letter that we
Still better than
submitted.
me doing it.
Say again? Oh, is that what would happen otherwise? All right. All right, dear Mayor Smith and Board of Trustees, we live at 65 North Broadways. We're the direct neighbors to the south of Villa Loire. The Villa Loire carriage house sits directly on our property line. We purchased our home 12 years ago and have been village residents for the past 18 years. We are writing to communicate our concerns with the proposed special permit application. We'd like to emphasize that we support the efforts to develop the Madam C.J. Walker Institute, Women of Color, and consider the estate to be one of several historic gems of Irvington. We have no issue with the Institute's proposed use of Villa Loire for seminars, workshops, meetings, office space, administration, tours, as long as there's no outdoor amplified sound, such as loudspeakers, microphone use, large gatherings, such as events. We would also like the board to consider decisions made for the Octagon House to be used as similar precedents for Villa Loire. With regards to the latest special permit application, we'd like to review proposed uses as it relates to the following 5 points. Number 1, noise, outdoor amplified sound anywhere on Villa Loire property gives us great concern. This is a residential neighborhood. We're wary of the property becoming an events venue, particularly after experiencing the disruption caused by the Pyre Moss Foundation show in 2021. Even events much smaller in size have the potential to cause significant disruption. The fashion show occurred over multiple days, included setup, microphone and sound testing, a rain date, and breakdown. The event took place on both the front and back properties, as well as the carriage house, for a post-show reception party. Noise included live outdoor music, amplified DJ music, and outdoor MC, large crowds. Also to note was the use of the back and side property of the carriage house for garbage accumulation, loud clinking empty bottles and glasses, and employee smoke breaks. You guys might have seen the video that we sent. You can see pictures of what I just described. That reception party we attended briefly, came home and it kept going. And I would say the number of attendees at the time were probably like 15 to 50 people for the reception portion of it. So I guess the point is the video showed the noise, amplified sound. that can occur with even a small event. The sound study completed by AKRF has limitations and it's subjective. In general, an acoustic sound study cannot account for the impact of sound on human behavior, emotions, or health. Again, we have great concern for outdoor noise. Number 2, events, seminars, workshops, and tours. How are these being defined? Where on the property will they be held? The village code's provisions on the adaptive reuse of historic buildings, 224-8.c, makes no reference to events. For each type of proposed use, can they be defined fully and include number of attendees, frequency, and exactly where on the property these events or seminars, workshops, tours, et cetera, would be held? Number 3, the Octagon Resolution. Can this be served as a precedence? The Octagon House and Villa Loire both exist within residential neighborhoods. We just talked about it. It seems logical that similar guidelines would apply, and we should be considering these. The Octagon Resolution provides that the Board of Trustees must approve special events. Private tours are by appointment. The Octagon House permits only 20 person per tour and only from the hours of 9:30 to 4:30 p.m. The maximum number of tours per day is 4, and the maximum number of days per week in which the tours can be conducted is 5. No snacks, drinks, that's the Octagon House. Number 4, the Carriage House, directly on our property line and within the aqueduct buffer. The Carriage House is situated directly on the property line and abuts to an area that our kids use often with friends. The Carriage House is also located within the aqueduct buffer and is mentioned as one of these proposed event locations. It's our understanding that there are zoning laws on activity within the aqueduct buffer. Number 5, notice of discrepancies within the special permit application. The application states Exhibit A, page 1, requirements for all programs and events held Monday through Friday be scheduled to start and end during the following windows of times and avoid peak periods at nearby schools, 10 to 11 a.m., 12 to 2 p.m., 4 p.m. or later, for example, but program may be scheduled from 10:30 to 4:30 p.m., but could not be scheduled from 9 to 3 p.m. In contrast to what is stated on page 2, which states private tours by appointment, Monday through Friday, 9 to 3 p.m. B, parking program is stated as programs, events, tours with more than 30 guests and 10 staff will utilize off-site parking. One of 3 proposed parking locations is Immaculate Conception Church. Having had a direct conversation with Father Ashman this past week, we learned that he has never been contacted by the current owner regarding proposed parking. He was not aware that ICC was indicated as a proposed off-site parking location. C, Exhibit C, states acoustical analysis results report. The report lacks human perception data. An acoustical analysis report provides objective measurements of sound levels and other acoustic parameters, but it does not account for how people perceive and react to sound. This is particularly important in a residential neighborhood, where noise complaints are often related to subjective factors such as annoyance, sleep disturbances, and stress. We're concerned with outdoor sound coming directly from the Loire. Crowds of people, large or small, music, emceeing of events, etc. We're so much less concerned, which a lot of the study was founded on, with noise that comes from traffic. Thank you for listening to this again, for reading it, and for your attention to our concerns. Appreciate it.
Just wanted to add two other things. I did speak with AKRF Chris Zolniak, and I asked him about the sound study, and the way he described it to me, it was more of just like a baseline sound study, and then everything else was just sort of projected and had a lot of assumptions. And I asked him, was amplified music used during the sound study? And he said no. So, I mean, as Jennifer had said, there's a lot of like charts and graphs and stuff, but I just simply asked him, like, you take the speaker and put it on the back deck patio. Did you have it at the Carriage House? Did you amplify it? And he said that was not part of the sound study. I said okay. The other thing, just thinking back on a conversation I had with just a local realtor. I mean, our home is an investment, just like most of us here, of course, all of us here, and the realtor said, if there were events, next to your property, it would be likely that it would potentially limit the number of interested buyers in your home. So, I mean, that's subjective and that has no direct impact on, property value. But, if you're limiting the number of potential buyers, that, it potentially has an impact on property value. But so that's our conclusion, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Chet?
Good evening, I'm Chet Kerr. I'm here on behalf of the Irvington Historical Society. I apologize, I have a cold, so I'm gonna sound horrible, so please. I'm here, the Historical Society's been a long proponent of this specific law allowing for adaptive reuse of historic buildings. We're a big supporter of historic buildings throughout the community, and we were a supporter of this law when it was passed in 2018. And we're very supportive also of the proposed adaptive reuse of Villa Lewaro. We think it's great. That's exactly how I think our hope was that the law would be used, to take a beautiful home like that and turn it into a valuable use that, if it really works the way I think it's been thought of, it will be a real boon to the community, which is great. The law, however, the premise of the law was that it would allow these adaptive reuses to ensure preservation of the building themselves, and therefore an important part of evaluating whether or not to grant a special permit and how it should be done is whether, in fact, what is the restoration process and what has to be done, what's going to be done in the future. In early April, we wrote to Ms. Gray and wrote her a letter and raised some of these questions and suggested that it would be good for the applicant to provide more of a detailed schedule about what the restoration stands and where it is. And I know they're working with Steve Tilley, which is great. He's a real pro, and that's wonderful. And Ms. Gray sent a copy of our letter to the board when she submitted her stuff last week. And she gave a short summary to say that we have been working on the interior of the space, and that's why perhaps you may not have seen as much work on the outside. I would respectively suggest that that's not quite enough. And I would suggest respectfully that the applicant, or if the board requests, that they provide a little more detail about what has to be done with the space both now and what is to be done to get it prepared to be operated as an institute. And there's two reasons for that. One is, it's been several years, and taking for given that a lot of the work's been done internally. There's not been a lot of activity at the site, and frankly, the outside of the Villa Lewaro is showing a little wear and tear. But I think also more importantly that this special use permit process presupposes that the outcome will be to preserve these homes. And I think the board, as it evaluates how it should do that, should build into its process to make that request. So with that, that's my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chet.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to comment on this project. My name is Dan Pole. I'm a resident right across the street from the Villa Lewaro property, right across Fargo Lane. So the property line is about 10 feet from our property. And we certainly want the Villa Lewaro to succeed with its missions, and certainly want the property to be healthy and thriving. And I appreciate the parking, sound, and other measures in the proposal aimed at reducing community impacts of the use. Specifically, no parking permitted on Fargo Lane, no unloading of buses on Fargo Lane, no amplification of sound after 8 on Sunday to Thursday, and after 10 on Friday and Saturday. The maximum number of people on site being 115, unless otherwise approved by the Board of Trustees. One question I would have for the board is, will the neighbors be notified when the Board of Trustees approves the number higher than 115? Villa Lewaro will host approximately 6 to 8 events per year. How will that be enforced? Enforcement of another law was talked about earlier today, and so I'm hoping that the board will choose to address enforcement of this. In general, how will the promises be codified, the statements that are in the application, and how will they be enforced? Will the permit be up for renewal at a future date? If so, when? And if the property owner is observed to not be in compliance with the promises that are made, who is responsible for ensuring that compliance. Should such a circumstance be brought to the attention of the board, I would just ask that question. So I invite the board to address these questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Ann, did you want to maybe talk about typically how it's done with a special permit? Typically, they're renewed, they're typically, I think the longest are
Yeah, well,
5 years usually, or?
you know, you can put what limit you want on it, and sometimes, sometimes the special permit early on is for a shorter period, and after, you know, things are going well, you know, they lengthen the time. I know sometimes Mercy comes in and says, we've been good, you know, give us 10 years this time or something. But you can put whatever limit you want on, that's not in the code. And in terms of, I guess the best enforcement is if they violate terms of the special permit, you always have the option not to renew the special permit, which I would think would be the biggest incentive to comply with the special permit.
Because I think we might even talked informally or maybe at one of our work sessions, like to me, you know, as you said, kind of like the first one might be only 1 year. You have to come back in and see that everything's working well. We even talked about, I think we had a slightly lower maximum number. I think we said 75 when we first started, and to us, kind of the same thing. Like you said, you know, you can only have, say, 75 with 15 staff, which I guess is 90, so it's not that big a difference. But then you say, okay, in a year from now, we haven't had any complaints. You know, everyone says it's working great. Why don't we go to 110? You know, so I think it can kind of work both ways with the 1 year cap, and that's kind of where I was leaning for a 1 year. You know, for the initial one anyway. And I also think that, assuming it all goes as well as the applicant says, that it shouldn't, I mean, the renewal shouldn't be, you know, a 3-year process for sure. You know, it should be much easier because a lot of the things that they're saying they're intend on doing will be done or they won't be done. So it's you know, it's not theory at this point. It's not a sound study. You know, to me, when I read something like a noise, traffic to me is a little more almost tangible, even though it's a lot of theory, but a lot of the sound, I kind of agree that it's hard for me to know what 4 decibels are, 6 decibels, or 10. And, you know, I think it's a lot of interesting work, but to me, it's, you know, it's almost, I go back to the, you know, almost your question, Mitch, about if they had 40 people over for a barbecue, you know, how loud is that versus, you know, 60 people for, you know, a presentation. I think you could almost make the case of presentations not as loud as a barbecue. So there's so many variables that it's hard to say, and I think that's why some of it has to be, you know, kind of you take them at their word that they're going to be good neighbors, you know, and I'm not as convinced by like a sound study as I am, you know, kind of having the, you know, the non-renewable rights just a year later. So this is a lot of work to, you know, lose a special permit in a year. So that's why I think, you know, you kind of take them at their word that it's going to work, or they're not going to have it anymore. You know, so that's.
Right. I should clarify one thing. I mean, I guess you could say no special permit at all, or you can put different conditions on it. That okay, we'll renew it, but you know, you can always change the conditions
or whatever. Yeah. Right.
One of this gentleman said about how we enforce the number of events. It's my understanding, that made me make sure that I understood it correctly, that every time there's a special event, that's something that you said you're going to notify the board about, right?
I don't believe that was in the application.
If it's an event that is greater
Oh.
than 100 guests and 15 staff, then we would have to come to your board for approval.
But for the ones that are less than 100.
We did not propose any notification for less than 100. That's something that we can discuss, but it wasn't proposed in our application materials.
Yeah, I guess I want to just say something about the noise. I think one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is presumably if this is a house, right, if you had a family living there, people had a party, you would there would be a party, right? It could be, and if it's at my house, it could be a really big party. So I think what you're sort of subjected to is still, right, the noise ordinance. I would think that you still have to comply with that. So, you know, it may be not the best, right, to have a party here and there next to your house, but I think we, you know, most people have parties here and there, right? And I think noise level is something that is tough because, you know, some people are louder than other people. My house is very loud. So I think it is, you know, again, it's the noise ordinance. So I think like in my own case, I try to be a good neighbor, right? Like I am cognizant of the music after a certain time. So I think we have to have sort of a similar expectation, right? That like the goal is to be good neighbors. I think we can't keep going back to the fashion show because I think everyone recognizes that maybe that's spun out of control and that, you know, for a lot of factors, I live on Riverview Road. I mean, there was, you know, there was the ComEd. I mean, it was like a perfect storm of different things. But I do think it's, you know, right, I think it's important in terms of getting the trust of the public or or the neighbors around Villa Lewaro to sort of have this time period where you have events and like people can get more comfortable with, you know, what you guys are trying to do. And that, again, like I think with the mission of the Institute, that if you have an institute that is trying to empower women of color in business, and you're not going to want to do that with like 4 people at a time, right? This I think necessitates, to me, sort of like a learning and groups of people. If you want to do that properly, right? It's not going to really help you to do 2 people at a time sitting in a giant house. So I think this is more of, we have to kind of establish, right? Like I don't think we can keep looking back, because that's not going to really kind of get us anywhere. We have to see how we're going to move forward, because even in the letters that I hear with concerns about noise and all these other things and traffic, I haven't heard one person say, I don't support the work of the Institute, right? So if we as a community support the work of the Institute, then let's see how we can make this work going forward without looking back, and having the right, you know, safeguards, right? So I think you guys will commit, right, to making sure it works also, and to making sure that you can kind of fit within the parameters that we decide so that it can be successful.
I appreciate.
If there's going to be, say, 8 events, you know, of the larger side, kind of more than 50, I think was kind of what he said. Maybe that's a simple notification to the village administrator or the clerk, and then we can, you know, maybe have a list of neighbors that we send that to, and as well as post it. We can post it on our website. We can even send a blast. But I think it probably makes more sense maybe to post it as well as reach out to the neighbors within a certain radius, and we can notice them on that. But it wouldn't be like for the ones that would be up to the special permit, it wouldn't be a approval by the board. It'd just be a notification. You know, reasonable, at least in the beginning. You know,
We're also allow Larry's office to keep track of how many of them there are. So that was one of the concerns that was raised.
And then if there's one on a, you know, a random one that we're not aware of, then we say, hey, we weren't aware that there's this larger event. What happened? And you know, again, I think the unfortunate thing was we had the kickoff of a giant event, and that's definitely front of mind for everybody. I think if we hadn't had that event, I don't think. I mean, to me, what's 75 versus 90? You know, like it's the numbers are 100 or 110 versus 90. They're kind of almost funny numbers in some ways, but it's, you know, we have to. I think we just trying to find a reasonable, something that works for the neighbors and for the Institute in the beginning. And then, you know, if we were wrong on the numbers and it should have been 60, or if it should have been 150, you know, then we can tweak it going forward. You know, I think that's kind of, as you were saying earlier, we have to kind of figure out a way to get this to work for everybody. And you know, I think we're gonna eventually have to jump in somewhere and try it. So.
I think we have to stop looking back. I mean, I think we all recognize, right, that again, I live on Riverview Road. I was stuck many times that day on my street, but okay, you know, like it was fine. Like I sometimes get stuck because of some traffic.
Yeah, but I think the bigger issues, the buses, parking, and it was kind of, you know, it was kind of a free for all in parking. People were parking wherever they could find a spot. That was very different. You know,
it is, yeah.
So I think that you know, I think we can, with enough notice and planning.
Yeah.
You know, even those events, the first day was more hectic than the rescheduled day because we saw some of the issues. We had more police there. Right. So there's a lot of things we can do to work through the issues. We just got to figure out what the starting point is.
Yeah, and I think one of the big distinctions there is that event occurred without the benefit of this special permit. Now we've gone through this process, we can set reasonable controls so that something like that doesn't happen again. And that type of event is not what we're proposing. I think that's clear to the board and to the public. We're not proposing to have DJs or bands. The type of music that was studied in noise analysis was low-level background music, that you would have at a networking event where, folks are having a glass of wine, some hors d'oeuvres on the back patio with some low-level, background music. That's the type of amplified music that we're talking about here.
You don't think you'd ever have an event where you would have a DJ? I mean,
We're not proposing that outside. Maybe inside, if the noise levels could remain reasonable and subject to the noise ordinance. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's something that I wanted to mention in my initial comments. We fully recognize that we are subject to the noise ordinance, just like every other property owner in the village. I wanted to just also mention one thing with respect to the noise study. I know one of the members of the public indicated that actual measurements were not performed. That's not correct. I don't know why the individual from AKRF said that, but actual measurements were taken at the property, both to measure ambient noise and during an event at the property. So that's detailed in the noise analysis. I just wanted to make sure that was clear for the record. Yes, models and calculations were applied to those actual measurements in order to project what a 100-person event would be, but they were based on actual measurements at the property. I also I appreciated the individual from Irvington Historical Society and his comments, and it also reminded me that I wanted to invite Steve Tilley up, if that's okay with the board, to just give a little bit of background as far as the restoration work that has been undertaken inside Villa Lawaro and some of the things that are proposed for the exterior as well, because I know they've been hard at work.
Before you get there, I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
I would think it, just so that there's no confusion, I don't know that we should say, that you're not going to have DJs or live music, because to me, I actually think I was at an event at Villa Lawaro many years ago, and there was definitely music, outside, live music outside. I think what's more important, so that people don't, then you have a DJ or live music, and people are like, you said no live music, I think the idea really is, again, being respectful of the noise ordinance, right?
Yep,
so whether
absolutely.
it's ambient music, background music, live music, or a DJ, that those things all fall within, the expectations of those.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
I just want to say I totally agree, because Madam Walker was a avid lover of music, so I also want to put that on record that there will never be a DJ or live music.
Also, I think one of my favorite pictures is on the back when she had all of her, employees there. I'm guessing they must have been top employees that got invited to Villa Lawaro, but to me, that was such a cool picture, and to have that come full circle, 150 years later, 100 years later, is very cool, in my opinion.
Yeah, there were over 100 people sitting on that back terrace. I think we tried to count them in the picture. Yeah. And there's a room in between the dining. By the way, I'm Stephen Tilley Architect, 22 Elm Street in Dobbs Ferry. There's a room between the dining room and the music room that's larger than the size of your dais, that's full of pipes that are connected to the pipe organ. So if you imagine the decibels that came out of that, that was an historic condition. But I guess I don't want to go into the weeds. I don't want to take up more of your time that's necessary, because once I get started on this process, I might never stop. We've been working with a team, a big team, since 2018, and that's under the direction of Rich Dennis, working with William James, kind of in just about daily contact, with the tremendous guidance of Lilia Bundles and Erica Seaborn, who's a part of our team, and as well as my preservation director, Stephanie Reinert, and our landscape designer, Elizabeth Martin, has been looking after the landscape. So there's a tremendous iceberg of
work that has, as you can imagine, the kind of properties that we work on, like Lyndhurst and like Villa Lawaro, you don't just rush in, call the painters and call the stucco guys and, come on over, let's, we're going to get something done. It takes a tremendous amount of research. This was carefully crafted by Vertner, Woods and Tandy. We don't have his drawings, we don't have his specifications, so we've been doing a huge amount of testing, research. We work under the easement that's was signed by Harold Doley with the National Trust for Historic Preservation, so that everything we do gets run by the National Trust for an initial approval, and then we can move ahead. So the kinds of work that we've been doing, I'm going to really focus on categories rather than individual things. We've been doing that kind of research. We've been doing testing of materials. There's some state-of-the-art 1910 materials in the building, and when we got here in 2018, the statute of limitations was running out on some of these materials, and so they've been deteriorating, not just in the last 2 years, but they've been deteriorating for 100 years, some of them. And the basic guts of the building is really sound. So we've been working on safety issues. We took down a number of hazardous trees, including a couple that were overhanging the aqueduct. So the concern about public safety has been paramount with us. We took down the pergola that was apparently installed in 2008, which actually already represented a danger to people on the aqueduct. So that was safeguarded. We've been nourishing the specimen trees. There's an amazing ginkgo, there's an amazing beech, a magnolia, which we have periodically getting nourished. And then, of course, like all of you who have old houses, there are a lot of repairs that occur that have to be done along the way. We just installed a new boiler. The boiler failed, of course, in the middle of winter, so we had to lurch into that significant expense. We've been working on the roofs. We've done roof repairs. We've been working on the structural repairs. There have been structural repairs that emerged in the course of our stay, so those kind of things have to be addressed immediately. We've been doing a lot of research on the historic building assemblies and finishes. We've designed a new pergola, and that's been going through the approval processes in the village, but also with the National Trust. And it's currently in pricing, so that we'll be moving along with that. There are drawings underway for the terrace. Again, it doesn't have the original finishes on the top, so a lot of research had to be done so that we could get the finishes that were the correct finishes, approximating what you saw in the photographs and so on. So there's really an iceberg of work that is not apparent to the Historical Society or Mr. Kerr, but it's been a constant process since 2018, and it will be a constant process for the next, the next period of time. It's 4 to 5 years. Thanks to a FedEx delivery vehicle, which began the demolition of the corner at Fargo Lane, soon to be Madam C.J. Walker Lane. We are already launched in minor adjustments, again in keeping with the historic character, to vehicle entry and exit, which would include emergency vehicles, but also the small jitney buses that might be associated with a larger event if those occur. So, that's the broad summary. The short, Reader's Digest version is that this is a constant process. and it will be going on, and we're happy to report on that progress that's going along.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public, anyone at home there? Yeah. Please.
So first, just because you just mentioned it, so are we changing the name of the street? Is that?
It's not, it's gonna be a second name. It's gonna be Fargo Lane and Madam C.J. Walker Way, because the folks on Fargo didn't want to actually change the name.
Okay. Okay. Well, first off, thanks for taking the time to listen. I guess I had a couple questions to start. Ms. Burgos, you mentioned that you throw a lot of parties, over 50, 100-ish.
No, but close. I'm kidding, but I do throw out.
Like 50 people, something like that?
50 people?
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Like 8 times a year, or 2 times a year, 1 time a year? What is it?
Definitely 8 times a year, but I don't think my parties are, I mean, you could go on with your.
Yeah, so I got,
Okay.
my question,
Yeah.
my question just is I'm trying to give everyone a moment to just put themselves in a neighbor's shoes of, basically a situation where we bought a home in a residential neighborhood and it's being proposed to change the home from a residence to a business. So I just ask each one of you, and even in this crowd also, like, I'm sure you all bought your homes, expecting that it's going to be a residential place, unless you live in the city or somewhere where, maybe there's some commercial.
I guess it
buildings
depends
that-
when you bought it too, because
Yeah.
for about 30 years, it was a assisted living facility.
Yeah.
So it wasn't always a home.
Right.
So, I mean, and I think that's part of this plan is to not make it go commercial, completely commercial, by having kind of the adaptive reuses. That was the whole purpose of the special permit.
Right.
Was to not, or have it deteriorate because no one could buy it, as a regular, just a plain house. So,
Gotcha.
but yes, get your point.
Yeah, so I would just ask that if you, if you're ever outside and having dinner outside your house, if you've had situations where on a Friday or Saturday night you're out there, or, and it's nice and quiet. I'm sure, probably 90% of the time it's nice and quiet. You can hear what's going on. You're not distracted by anything but maybe birds or, perhaps, 1 or 2 sounds on the street. And then, the difference from that to going to, you're outside with your family, and now there's, 100 people right next door, right? So this, I just think it's a big difference. And
I mean, I also think, I get what you're saying. I live on Riverview. Right behind me is Abbott House, which has, I think up to 80 people living there. So we hear them playing. And then we
Sure,
have the high school I'm right in the blast zone
Yeah.
of the amplified sound from the
Yeah.
high school. And it seems that, I used to think it was football games. And now I think it's every track event has a DJ. And, so to me, it's, yes, I knew there was a school there, but I never knew there was going to be amplified sound, to be honest. But
Yeah.
I put up with it 'cause it's not that bad. It's usually during the day. I mean, there's some nights, but it's probably 20 times a year, 25 times a year. So, I mean, there are other sounds sometimes.
Sure.
I know what you're saying. I get your overall point.
So my second point would just be, and I also have 3, young ladies that, swim in the pool with their bathing suits on, I'm sure when you bought your house, you may have people that can see into your yard, we try to minimize that, but it's still, we're in a residential neighborhood. And so I just asked that you would think, if your neighbor who could see into your home, into your backyard, if it was changing from a family to a business, how that would make you feel, in terms of your privacy. It's not even just like a business where the same people are going to be coming every day. We're talking about, different people for each event, and specifically people who are there to tour the area, to look around the area, right? So I just ask that you put yourself, in our shoes. It's a huge change. It's really a huge change. So I guess, in closing, I would just ask if we can walk before we run. I mean, that's really what I'm asking here, like walk really slowly. I know we don't want to go back to the last event, right? But it's impossible to not have that in your mind, really. But I just ask that you consider things that you put yourself in our shoes, consider things I'm saying, and try to see if we can walk before we can run. And also, perhaps there's landscaping that can be done that can create more privacy for the neighbors. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask you your name? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Jesse Clinton.
Thank you.
That's 4
How are you guys?
Good, how are you?
My name is Gladys Barrera, and I am from 72 North Broadway, right across the street from Mansion. I know they had an event, and it was horrific because it was for 2 days that nobody can do anything because it was so much noise. And I go sometimes occasionally, and I leave my doors open. I'm gonna have to be worried now because a lot of people are gonna be watching. I am right across the street. And another thing is that I do not understand is this is for women of color. I thought this is to help the town, it's for everybody. My daughter could not go to the school because she's not of color. And this is residential, and it will become commercial. People coming to ask me if I have parking because I have a large parking. So please see, like somebody says, put yourself in my shoes. I would not want to be watching over my shoulders because if I go somewhere, it's a lot of people walking now. And it's very quiet. I've been here 25 years. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? There's no one at all.
So I know we've taken up a lot of your time already, but I do have Ms. Alelia Bundles, who is a relative of Madam C.J. Walker, who I know would like to say a couple words before we conclude. And then also Mr. Dennis, the owner of the property, is with us tonight as well. And I know he would like to say a couple words as well.
Sure.
If we can indulge you for a few more minutes of your time. Thank you.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's always good to be with Irvington, whether virtually or in person. So as you all know, I have a great deal of affection for the village and for the house. I really appreciate Trustee Burgos's admonition that we look to the future. I think that this institute is really about not just inviting women of color, but everyone is welcome. And these are truly successful women, some who are millionaires like Madam Walker, people who have been highly educated, who could perhaps be an inspiration to some of the young women who are there in Irvington. So that is our goal. And I know that that's certainly how I conduct myself. I feel fortunate that in the last couple of years, as we've been able to readjust through COVID and whatever this new normal is, that I actually have been able to speak to small groups of people. I don't think anybody heard us. We were doing good things. Some employees from Eileen Fisher came. We had a lovely afternoon. I've spoken to young people from Jack and Jill. I know that there are educational events quietly being had because the house is so inspirational. We've also done a couple of things. I did a commercial with Ancestry.com. I don't think anybody, I know that we applied for a permit. I don't think anybody heard anything while we were doing that. We did another Netflix shoot. The Preservation League of New York filmed something with me there. So we are really about doing things that are positive, that make Irvington look good, that bring inspiration to the village. And so I really hope that this will be part of your thinking as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being on tonight, and thanks for coming by Irvington when you can. Rich, do you want to say something?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
I'm going to apologize in advance because my service here is terrible. So I'll break up and go in and out, but hopefully you guys can hear me. First of all, I do want to say thank you for all of the time and effort and energy that has gone into this evening and all of the time leading up to this evening. Look, we've acknowledged the challenges with the fashion show. We are very much aware of the inconvenience that caused to the town and to the residents, and we've acknowledged that. We've done everything that we can to address that, and we will continue to be sensitive to those needs and those issues. So our intention here is not to be bad neighbors or to be to not be thoughtful around the impact that we can have. But we also believe that from that property, that home, this community, we can have a tremendous impact across the globe for people that don't get the opportunities or that haven't had the opportunity to further those opportunities. To date, since we launched the Institute, we currently have over 27,000 women on our digital platform. We never proposed to bring all of those women into the community. What we proposed to do was to bring the very, very best of those folks, the very best businesses run by those folks, to this place of inspiration. That's what we're doing. The work that we're doing on the property, I heard folks talking about property value, will tremendously, already has and will continue to drive tremendous impact to property values there. We don't foresee this as a place of partying. We see this as a place of celebration, right? Of thoughtful, careful, impactful work that we get to celebrate the people that do that work and that deliver that impact. So what we've asked for here has gone back and been and taken into consideration the learnings of the past, but also incorporating within there the opportunities of the future. We could have gone out and there's many people in the town of Irvington that have expressed support and that wanted to come to this hearing to show that support, and my request for them and response for them was no, this is amongst the people that actually live in that immediate area and us as neighbors. And so we're working through it and we'll continue to work through it. When we think about the tremendous amount of investment that needs to go into the property to stand it up, there's also already been a tremendous amount of investment that has gone into the property just to acquire it, to stabilize it, to preserve it, and now to revive it, right? Not having this settled makes it difficult to plan out 5 years if we don't know what we're going to be doing, or 2 years, or 10 years, or whatever the case may be. I think the proposal that we've made takes into account all of these various issues and being thoughtful around how they come off, how they get developed, how they get executed. But in the end, our objective here is to drive the good of this community out into the world and to allow for the people that we hope to serve with this to get the opportunities to celebrate, to get the opportunities to engage with each other, and to get the opportunities to develop greater impact in the world beyond themselves and beyond their individual businesses. So I just wanted to say thank you for the consideration. I know that this has been going on for some time now, but hopefully we've put a proposal in front of you guys that that can lead us into the next iteration of our development. And just thank you all, and looking forward to getting this project even further down the line. But make no mistake about it, the impact of the work that the Institute is doing in conjunction with the Madam C.J. Walker Foundation is already tremendous. And being able to do this will drive even more impact. I mean, I think to date, between the New Voices Foundation and which is where the Institute resides, we've probably given out north of $5 million in non-dilutive grants. Those businesses have now gone on to, some of them have now gone on to become, pretty sizable businesses and operations, and that are driving much change in their communities as well. We would like to have Irvington be a part of that in a big way, and as I said before, be the epicenter of that. But it doesn't need to look like it looked for the fashion show, and it won't look like it looked for the fashion show. And I'd ask all of us as I forget, pardon me, I forget your name. But as you said, let's look to the future. We can't undo what happened at the fashion show, but we can learn from it. And we have learned from it. And we will continue to move forward in a way that I think will make everybody in that community proud. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so.
We do have a written question.
Oh, okay.
My name is Jorge Magellan, residing at 286 Riverview Road. As a resident of the village of Irvington, one of the first large events I attended here was Immaculate Conception's Spring Fling, perhaps 5 to 7 years ago. In fact, I specifically made sure to attend the event because I was so excited to see such a historic building. So that leads me to my question. Aside from the generous offer to offer tours, are there any other ways that are contemplated to reach out to the village, town, and surrounding communities? I'm excited to see a growing relationship with the Institute and the community. Thank you.
Sure. So this question has come up previously, and we're happy to work in partnership with the village. I know that there was questions about having the local Girl Scouts come in for tours, or doing programming perhaps with the Irvington Historical Society. So I know the ownership is happy to work with the village in partnership and local organizations. And Mr. Dennis, if there's anything else that you want to say with respect to that, I would defer to you. But the question is,
no, I would. Thank you. I would for sure, 100%. I mean, that's the whole idea. Whether it's Girl Scouts, whether it's Jack and Jill, whether it's civic organizations, whether the Madam C.J. Walker legacy is a legacy for all of us. It's here's a woman with whose parents were born slaves. She was the only one in her family not born a slave, with really no education to speak for her. And she built an incredible business that empowered all of those hundreds and hundreds of women, and that, that picture that you talked about, Mr. Mayor. So this isn't about, hey, this is for one group. This is for one idea, right? And that is the idea of inclusion. Economic inclusion. And so this is about everybody that is interested in making this world a more equitable place, for sure. So I would, let's get it on. Let's go.
Can I just add, Mr. Mayor, as you know, I try to make myself available for these kinds of forums where, especially with young people. So as some of the work is finished and as things move forward, it would certainly be my pleasure to be there as a storyteller and a tour guide and all of those things. It's something that I really would look forward to doing to benefit the village. And actually, I will be in Irvington, I think June, or in the neighborhood June 14th or 15th for a speech to the League of Women Voters. So I'm trying to make myself available whenever I can.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mayor Smith, may I ask one question?
Sure.
So, just thanks for taking the time to, speak with us directly. I guess I wonder, is there a way for us as neighbors, right, to come together and agree on, kind of like, all right, these things make sense, let's, start here, as opposed to, like, when you come and talk with us, right, I feel like, we're in some kind of communication, right? So I just wonder, is that possible? Is there a way for us to come together and say, all right, there's 7 houses that directly are next to Villalwara. So is there a way for us to all get together and say, all right, these are the type of things we're thinking, and then come back, and is that a better way that everyone feels good about, that we can, also support what you're doing? Because what you're doing is, I haven't had a chance to talk through that, but is historic, it's huge, right? And it would be great for the community. It's just, I think I'd just like to be able to have a chance to kind of agree where we're going to start. That's my request. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the processes are, the policies or the procedures are, and what we're doing is following, what the policies and the procedures are of the community. And so, hence we've submitted this application, and we're working it through this process. And so we should absolutely continue to do that. But in addition to that, I have never been opposed to, and in fact think it's a good idea for, let's get our permitting things squared away and let's get that done. But we should have dialogue, and we should figure out, hey, this isn't working this way, how do we tweak it that way? Because we're not here to be disruptive. And in fact, I think this works even better if we've got the whole community behind us, and neighbors working as neighbors to solve some of these issues. I would tell you, one of my biggest disappointments was I was at the fashion show both days, and saw all of the pain, but also saw all of the joy. And there were several neighbors that were there that attended both days, that celebrated both days, that were there until late both days, that talked to me and didn't at any instance there lodge any of those complaints. We did talk about some of the issues, but nobody said, hey, this is really a big problem. Can we do this? None of that happened, right? And then even after, I got texts from people saying, thank you for doing this, had a great time, kids really enjoyed it. And then we started with this process, and some of the things that I heard for the first time during this process, which, you have my number, you can text me, we've texted, might have been good to say, hey, heads up, these are some of the challenges, can we discuss them? So to your point, I'm happy to have that dialogue as a neighborhood, but know that what we're trying to do is not to be disruptive, or in fact, it behooves us to make sure that the values of the property in the neighborhood, continue to go up, because that impacts the value of Madam C.J. Walker's mansion, and the things that we can continue to do in supporting it and upkeeping it and maintaining it. So I do appreciate your thought on that. And all I'm saying is I've always been open to that. I have been open to that. I remain open to that. We should absolutely do that.
So what's the best way to do that then? What's a good next step?
I mean,
The-
you guys can coordinate.
Yeah. Yeah, so the team is there, we'll coordinate and we'll set something up.
So if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to help coordinate and schedule something. Absolutely.
I think that's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, happy to coordinate that.
Anything else online?
Not online, no.
Okay. Otherwise, I think we'll keep the public hearing open. For last time. Thanks everyone for participating. We appreciate it. And I assume it'll be on the next agenda as well, which is
that's up to you. I mean, I don't, we have to coordinate, assume that it'll be on the agenda and then.
It'll be on the agenda for June 5th.
Yeah.
June 5th.
And
is there anything, I mean, we've heard a lot of comments tonight. Is there anything that the board specifically would like us to address in response to comments tonight for June 5th? We've tried to respond sort of in real time here to comments as they've come up. But if there's anything outstanding that you'd like us to address for June 5th, we're happy to hear that.
They came up with was the coordination with the neighbors to, make sure that their opinions are heard and you guys can have dialogue. That's really it. I don't have any other.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I have a comment.
Sure.
I just want to say that for the most part, I don't think that having the there should implicate like any additional crime or not being able to close your door or any of the rest of that. So I think that's not a very unfair comment. I don't think there was any criminal activity that we were about, even at the fashion show. It was more inconvenience and noise. So I just want to make sure that, I personally will just say that, and I said this at the Madam C.J. Walker naming, at the dedication. I've lived in Irvington for 12 years. I lived here for several years and didn't even know that house was there, right? I have 2 kids of color, right? We're a family of color. That's an incredible source of pride for us as a family to have that house there and her legacy. So I think by and large, I think this community should absolutely be very proud of that house and proud that that's there. And I personally am very supportive of an institute that, as you said, is about inclusion and including women of color economically in a system that they have not been able to participate in. So I personally just want to say that most people in Irvington are not concerned about criminal behavior. And I think, again, we do have we have some issues to work out, but I think we can do that and we can move forward, and any issues that come up, we can address, right? It's not, I know you guys want it to be successful and we're gonna want it to be successful, right? It's an incredible treasure that we should be extremely proud of and happy that someone is taking care of that legacy. So that's really my only comment.
Thank you. We obviously share your sentiment about the comments and appreciate you voicing those. Thank you.
Also, sometimes things seem so absurd. Like I don't have to say anything.
Yeah,
I
I
think it's
know.
important to say
Sometimes
something.
yeah,
Yes.
that always.
Thank you.
After something more mundane, and perhaps more nuts and bolts, can we just make sure that the off-site parking is secure, in some way it's part of the permit or part of the agreement? Off-site parking, it will be secured for an event that's over the 30.
Yes, so we have those three locations, and William was in communication with all 3 of those locations back at the initial submittal of the application. Unfortunately, over the past week or 2, we've not been able to reach Father Ashman. I know William has placed a call, but hopefully before June 5th, we'll be able to be in communication with him.
For you to control your scheduling, funerals happen and then all of a sudden, the church is occupied.
Absolutely.
When it may not have been.
Absolutely.
So just so that, it's set so we know that.
And that's the benefit of having various locations as well. So appreciate the comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
I just want to say thank you to Mr. Dennis for making himself available to the neighbors. I thought that was a very helpful offer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, for sure.
Great. So
Okay.
we'll move on to the next one, which is I'll make a motion to open a public hearing to consider a request by Abbott House to establish a community residence facility pursuant to Padovan law. I'll make a motion. I can have a second. Second. All in favor? Sure. Thanks, guys. Sure.
I think
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, kind of, and then at the end when our role is.
Yeah.
Or not.
Right.
That's a good way to explain it.
good, yeah.
think we're good.
So, yeah, under the New York State mental hygiene law, there's a particular section referred to as the Padavan law. A community residential facility for the disabled that houses from 4 to 14 residents must be considered a single-family home for zoning and other purposes. So it isn't, sometimes it's said it's exempt from zoning. It's not really exempt from zoning, but it's to be treated as a one-family house. And there is a one-family house on the Abbott House campus, and they'll explain to you what they're going to use for, but that is going to be used for one of these community residential facilities. Truth is, the village doesn't have much of an option not to permit the use. It's tightly regulated by state law, and the procedure is as follows. The proponent of the group, well, I'll call it a group home because that's easier, writes the mayor to advise the village that the facility is being proposed, the proposed site, the number of residents, the community support requirements, and data, most recently published data about other community residential facilities in the area. That was all done. Abbott House sent a letter in April that included all that information. Then the village has 40 days. Can do one thing. One, approve the site. Two, suggest one or more other suitable site in the village that might accommodate the facility. Or three, object to the facility on the grounds that this additional facility would result in such a concentration of community residential facilities in the village as to substantially alter the nature and character of the area. It's a very high standard. Prior to responding to the proponent, the village may hold a public hearing. It doesn't have to, but you are holding the public hearing tonight. So again, after it, your choice is to approve the site, suggest another site, find that it's, there's too many of them, or do nothing, in which event the facility can be established if there's no objection within 40 days. Well, we did on the last application we had, which was Montanito, we did after the hearing have a resolution saying that we approved it.
Meredith, did they provide a list of other facilities in the area?
Did they? Yes.
Pursuant to the third option?
Did they
Yes.
provide that list? Yes,
Yes.
they did. It was in the application.
They haven't updated that from the application.
No, apparently, the statute even said, I know we talked about
Yeah,
this,
that's
it
why
was
I'm
very
asking.
difficult, but the statute even says you're supposed to provide the list provided by one of the state agencies.
And
And
that's it.
that was it.
And under that list, there was almost no facilities.
No, no, there were almost none, and the ones they had don't exist, and so it wasn't,
Yeah, actually, I think Villa Luaros was still on there as.
it was, yeah,
any
yeah.
pub-
But you
any
could,
pub Which hasn't been there for 20 years.
yeah, well, you've got the public hearing. If there's a
30.
lot out there,
Time
people
flies.
let you know tonight, you would know just by your own experience.
So the law is pretty clear on this. There's not a lot for us to do here.
No. You have one basis for denying it.
Yeah.
Or you could suggest
Other sites,
another
yeah.
spot, Riverview maybe.
It's close enough.
Why not?
We kind of want to.
Bill and Romero.
There you go. Yeah, so I mean, if you guys want to,
Did you formally open the public hearing? I'm sorry.
I think I did, yeah.
You did, okay, so you're all set.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
We
Okay,
seconded.
apologize.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember voting.
No, I was,
Yeah, we're like,
good,
Do you
thank you.
remember who seconded it?
I don't, but I know that I.
I'll go back to
I think
Larry Lockett.
Larry Lockett.
Lockett did.
Thank you, I apologize, I must have been looking for some
I think we all
documents.
voted yes. so.
Yeah, it was unanimous.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Great. Do you guys want to give us a quick overview of what's going on?
I'll let you. I'm Walter Montgomery, Chairman of the board at Abbott House and 37-year resident of Irvington. I live now, my fifth residence in Irvington is on Strawberry Lane, where Abbott House is located. So I'm here tonight for this reason. And I have with me the CEO of Abbott House, James Kaufman, who can address, I think, all the technical questions and issues.
Any questions at all? Any information? I quoted the exact statute and this morning to let them know how it worked.
Good.
So I'm so glad I got it right.
James Kaufman, CEO of Abbott House. On the campus, there's a house that those of you who've driven through or walked through the campus know has been disintegrating over time. It actually was a residence, it had been used that way historically, and it had also been used as an office building. Since the residential treatment center closed a long time ago, it's been falling into disrepair. We've looked at using it for a number of different things, and when the state put out that there were young people coming out of residential schools and needed places to live in the community, but also be supervised, we thought of that house. We applied to OPWD, the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. Could we use this house? And they said yes, and they sent people down. We did architecture and work and the notification following the Padavan process and all the rules. The house would accommodate 4 individuals, would have 2 to 4 staff depending on the time of day. They would not be unaccompanied off the campus or even unaccompanied on the campus. There would be basically no resource question for the village other than the occasional, which we have anyway. If gas main broke, call Con Ed, or somebody fell ill, I got a heart attack, call the police. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. It's we have 16 of these IRAs ranging from Westchester to Rockland and a couple in the Bronx. Our relationships with our neighbors are very good. The other day, someone said we had our noise too loud by the gym. They believed there was some developmentally disabled adults of the type that would be in this house. It was actually the staff and the kids that live in the place. So I immediately talked to my vice president, Jeff, and I said, Jeff, lower the music, neighbors hear it, and bring it inside. That's the kind of neighbors we hope to be. And I take the calls directly on people coming up the hill and saying our staff are driving too fast. I used to send my vice presidents down to watch the people coming up the hill and see how fast they're going and get the van number so we could have a little discussion about how they're driving. Because if they're going fast up our hill, what does that mean about the kids or the people in those vans that I care about? So I don't have any concerns about this at all, and I'm here to answer any questions or concerns or thoughts you may have. In case I've left out anything, talking too fast.
Can I just say one more?
No.
Like you could stop, Walter? After you, Walter.
I used to sit up there. And got some respect, but in any event, I just wanted to mention that for those that might not know, Abbott House has been around for 60 years, and it was founded in 1963. And 2 years later, Martin Luther King blessed Abbott House by coming to Irvington and giving a speech at its first fundraising gala. So it has a long, deep history. And I think overall, over the years, there's been almost no serious issue in terms of any kind of misconduct or threat to the public. And we do try very hard to be, good citizens.
Yeah, I think there's been some great interaction with some of the high school sports teams and some of the children in the refugee program. I'm a direct neighbor. I think I can almost look out my bedroom window and see the house in question. I don't have any questions. I think we had the public hearing as kind of a, I think in case there were concerns that we weren't aware of, and B, to me, more importantly, to hear a little bit about it from you guys. Sure. I think that you guys do a tremendous amount of work that's kind of behind the scenes and no one's aware of it. I think you're still the largest foster care provider in Westchester and Rockland, is that right? Yes. I don't think a lot of people know that. A lot of people think it's what happens in those buildings, but it's way beyond that. And not that up there isn't important. It's
important in our industry is that we're good neighbors. If we're doing it right, you should know.
Yeah.
People talk about property value lapses. We open a group home, usually we raise the property because we maintain the property better than the average neighbor. So that never gets into the studies, but that's a fact.
Yeah.
And it's been studied. So we'll just be serving more young adults and doing a good job. And if we're not, you'll tell us and we'll fix it. Going on there.
Mr. Mayor, one measure of, I think, the conduct of Abbott House is that, I know from my experience on the planning board, every 5 years, Abbott House had to come to the village permit. And to my knowledge, it was basically a pro forma procedure because there were no serious issues. We still have to do that, go through the process every 5 years.
I do. I've done it twice. Been there 11 years and change.
Can I say I learned another really interesting fact about Irvington? I didn't know that Martin Luther King Jr.
He's
blessed Abbott. That's a pretty cool fact.
Yeah, you come in our lobby and you're welcome to visit. People walk through our
Mhm.
space and dogs, so it's fine. You'll see a picture of him and the founder and the first CEO in 1963. Gives me goosebumps. Yeah. And he was one of my childhood heroes. I grew up in the 60s and remember when he was killed and when John Kennedy was killed. I was in first grade and came home crying because we were all dismissed from school and all that. And I started working with a woman named Betsy Litt, Department of Community Mental Health in Westchester.
30 years. I tell her, "Oh, I'm going over to Abbott House, I'm gonna be the CEO." She goes, "My father founded Abbott House." That Arthur Litt is Bessie Litt, who worked for community mental health in Westchester County her entire career. And she said, "Oh, by the way, the greatest day of his life was when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. came and spoke at the Abbott House, a gala, which was done in Eastchester, one of the clubs, because I don't know what facilities were in the area. But the other gentleman, Garvin, actually, we got a call from a 78-year-old adult, who was a child at the Abbott in Irvington, which was 3 years before it was Abbott House. But it was rheumatic hospital. He came from rheumatic fever up from Brooklyn, in gangs and all kinds of stuff. And he said, Joe Garvin straightened me out. I went on to get a college degree, a master's degree, was adopted by the family. And I just wanted to tell you that the 3 years I was there were the best 3 years of my life, and they saved my life. We've invited him to come back. He went to France with his family to our gala in October. And then, of course, Walter meets somebody who actually worked as, what was the title you said tonight, the woman who had it?
Rheumatic fever.
She was working in medicine and rheumatic fever, checking different types. She worked there in 1960. It's possible that this old man, formerly young man, and young woman knew each other at Abbott House in 1960.
Yeah.
It's a very small and strange world, but anyway, I'm taking up your time.
No, no worries. And also, I mean, one of our police officers actually got an award tonight for the work he did.
I thought that's
with,
what that was.
with the refugee children that are up there. So
That's what I thought.
again, it shows how it works both. I think it enriches our community, and hopefully we enrich your community. It's all one big community. So
Hopefully
I mean, the
it's not
time's up.
emergency.
So procedurally, Marianne, we wanted to do a proclamation to.
Well, I
Yeah, we have.
I
You have
prepared a
something?
resolution.
Okay. Oh, great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
I
if we
mean,
have any questions here,
no.
we have questions from.
Just,
the
I
public.
prepared the resolution just in case you were,
Yeah.
you were ready.
Yeah,
Larry?
it's also interesting that not a single person is coming to speak
Yeah.
against it, so.
Also, what
I
was the
imprinted on
maximum
Maria.
amount of residents?
Oh,
that
I'll-
we have
let me
there,
read it.
at Abbott
You go
House?
ahead.
Like
Sure.
at the peak.
At the peak, in the Abbott House itself, it was 55 children, 12 or under.
Okay.
In terms of the foster care around the state and the county, we had over 700 children in foster care. The other interesting thing that people don't know, and I've said this when I started my career, there should not be foster care, there should all be treatment foster care. Every one of these kids is traumatized. Even if they came into foster care for simple reasons, still traumatic. Abbott House actually invented treatment foster care in the 70s, so
Okay,
it's an interesting history.
okay, this is what the resolution is. Okay, whereas Abbott House, a provider of services to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, wrote to the village in a letter dated April 13th, 2023, that it intended to renovate a home on its campus at 100 North Broadway and operate it as a community residential facility for the disabled. And whereas Abbott House wrote that the facility will be licensed by the New York State Office for People with Developmental Disabilities as an individualized residential alternative for 4 adult individuals with intellectual and development disabilities with 24-hour supervision. And whereas the New York State Mental Hygiene Law 4134 provides that a community residential facility established under this section of the law shall be deemed a family unit for purposes of zoning and other local laws. And whereas Mental Hygiene Law 4134 provides that once a village receives notice of intent to establish a facility in the village has 40 days to approve the site, suggest one or more suitable sites within the village which could accommodate such a facility, or object to the establishment of the facility because it would result in a concentration of community residential facilities so as to substantially alter the nature and character of the area of the village in which it's proposed to be situated. And whereas Mental Hygiene Law 4134 permits but does not require a public hearing on the establishment of a facility in the village, held a public hearing on the matter on May 15, 2023. And whereas the Board of Trustees does not know of another suitable site to recommend and does not believe that this facility will result in a concentration of residential facilities for the disabled in the village, now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Irvington Board of Trustees approves Abbott House's establishment of a community residential facility for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities with 24-hour supervision. subject to its receiving and maintaining a license from the New York State Office of Mental Health and meeting the requirements of the New York State Uniform Building and Fire Prevention Code.
Okay. So if there's no more questions, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing first. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Now I'll read the resolution again. No. So I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution as read by the village attorney. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. You'll make us proud.
I will. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for teaching us something.
It's really, it's special.
Next up is public hearing to consider local law amending the zoning code to clarify provisions on solar energy equipment. Mary Ann show.
Yeah. Okay, these are really just clarifications, not changes. And the way the language reads now, some people read it to say that the solar energy equipment could be used for power for the people who own the house or own the property where it's being set up, but use it on another piece of property. That's I guess a reasonable reading of the statute, but certainly the other way that it has to be used on site is also reasonable. But to clarify, and so that other way, that other interpretation can't be used, because it was in fact the intent of the board when they passed when they passed this law, that whatever power the solar equipment is generating has to be used on that site. So adding this language is a little awkward, but so solar energy equipment provided it's used only to provide power for use A, by owners, lessees, tenants, residents, or other occupants of the premises, and B, on the premises on which it's erected. Well, a little more awkward than it was, but you can't get around it this way. And then the other change it makes, move it down, Larry, is it amends the site development plan approval section to say that site plan approval is not required for roof-mounted solar energy equipment, which was always the intention, and in fact has not been, planning board review has not been required by the planning board, not sent over by the building department. The reason that's got to get in there is the way the code reads. It says the erection of any building except for, and there were some things listed, and our definition of building would include roof-mounted solar energy equipment. So this had to be pulled out. Again, not a change. This, in fact, is the practice, but it clarifies the law. And because these aren't any substantive changes, I don't think they need to do secret or anything on
it. Board have questions? Anyone from the public at home have questions, Larry?
I'm not commenting on that.
No.
We were on everyone in the room. So that's,
We discussed this already, so.
yeah, so I will make a motion to close the public hearing. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so I guess I'll read this. Be it enacted by the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, I think all you need to do is to adopt I'm sorry, we didn't put a resolution in here.
Okay.
You're adopting a local law amending the zoning code to clarify provisions on solar energy equipment.
I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Larry. Next up is a presentation of the annual stormwater report for fiscal year 2022, 2023, which is, everyone looks forward to this every year.
Sorry, we cleared out the room before that.
Yeah, they'll watch it on
They
tape.
should put on this first.
Yeah, they're right, into the whole crowd here. Okay, so let me run through just a brief overview of what this is about. So attached to the agenda is a very long and rather boring looking report that's considered our annual stormwater report. As a result of the United States Clean Water Act, entities such as Irvington that operate stormwater collection systems must develop and implement a stormwater management program. We did this 20 plus years ago and we continue to follow it. One of the requirements of the stormwater management plan is to prepare and file an annual report. The annual report, which is what's on the agenda, I'll summarize here for you so you don't have to read the whole thing if you haven't done it yet. The annual report is divided into 6 basic sections, which are referred to as minimum control measures. I'll walk through each one. Number 1, public education and outreach. In this section, we outline the education topics and the groups we reached. Examples include household hazardous waste disposal, illicit discharges, pet waste management, and recycling. We reached residents, businesses, and contractors, for example, and we did it by using our mailing list of 1,400 plus subscribers, social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, along with direct contact through our building department. And all of that's documented in this report. Number 2 is public involvement and participation. We post information about our stormwater management plan. We encourage the public to call with any stormwater issues that they may have, and the mayor and I know that that happens on a fairly regular basis, especially after it rains. Even this presentation is actually considered part of our public involvement and our outreach. We posted this annual report to the village website. It was attached to the agenda. We sent around notifications of our agenda. So all of that is what's considered outreach to the public. Illicit discharge detection and elimination. For this section, we mapped the location of each outflow, which is the flow of stormwater around the village, where it empties into a stream or a water body. Each of those 68 locations are inspected during dry conditions when the water shouldn't be running to determine if there's some sort of non-natural or illicit discharge. During the past year, we were fortunate that none of the locations showed any illicit discharges. If we had found any, we would respond immediately and determine the source of the discharge. For 4 and 5, they're somewhat combined: construction site and post-construction control. This is for construction sites where we require a stormwater permit when the area of disturbance is greater than 1 acre. The permit triggers site inspections by the building department, and during the past year, there were 4 such permits that were active. And we listed them out in the annual report. For post-construction controls, this involves the monitoring of storm control infrastructure. For example, a retention basin that might have been required during construction of a subdivision. For that type of infrastructure, our building department would make sure the basin is maintained and inspected annually. There are 4 such basins on our inventory, and frankly, there's probably more that need to be on it. It's an ongoing process to inventory and make sure we have everything captured. And the final one is stormwater management for our municipal operations, minimum control measure number 6. For this section, we provide information on how we maintain village-owned infrastructure, specifically parking lots, streets, catch basins, and things like that. Over the course of a year, we quantify the number of acres of parking lots that we've swept, the number of miles of streets that we've swept, which is 880, and the number of catch basins that we clean out each year. We have 672 catch basins. We clean them out at least once a year. We shoot to clean them out twice a year, and the problem ones we clean out even more than that. And that's the report. So if there's any questions you have, I'm happy to answer them or happy to get you the answer. But otherwise, this report will document when this presentation took place, and we'll file this with New York State DEC by the end of the month.
We used to have the person who prepared this come in and do about an hour-and-a-half presentation in the first couple of years.
It wasn't that long, but it seemed like it.
You would go through almost every page.
I think my first year with that was the last year.
Was the last year. Yeah, it's the staff is fully on board with all this. We work with that consultant each year to prepare this report.
Yeah, I mean, it's important work.
Yeah.
As you said, the report itself is fairly mundane and boring.
Correct.
You tell it gets filed with the state.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, thank you, Larry.
Okay. Nothing for you to do, no resolution.
Now, just a presentation, except as read. Next is resignation from the Architecture Review Board. Resolved to accept with regret the resignation of Gail Weller as a member of the Architecture Review Board effective May 15, 2023. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Gail, for your service to the ARB. Next up is promotions in the Department of Public Works. Did you want to go over any of this, Larry?
Yeah, so this is a series of 3 promotions that are all related to the retirement of longtime General Foreman Steve Caparel. So the 3 promotions, again, which kind of cascade on each other. Todd Smith will be promoted from Assistant General Foreman to General Foreman. Timothy Brennan will be promoted from Motor Equipment Operator Grade 1, which is a specific title, up to Assistant General Foreman. And Craig Smith will be promoted from Motor Equipment Operator to Motor Equipment Operator Grade 1. It just has to do with the type of equipment he'll be operating. So he'll be operating the larger equipment.
Are Todd and Craig related?
No.
No, I'm not related to you.
That's my next question. It's a joke, but yes.
Todd was a year ahead of me in high school, but we're not related. Timothy Brennan was 3 years ahead of me in high school before.
There you go.
And Craig Smith was 2 years behind me, so I think I've known them all, but not related to any of them.
All right.
Any other questions? I will just anecdotally say, or I will just not anecdotally, but I will just say that I've interacted a bit with Todd Smith recently, and I think he's done actually a very good job, stepping up within the DPW, and it's been great working with him. So congratulations, Todd, Tim, and Craig. Resolved to promote and appoint the following in the Department of Public Works, effective May 16, 2023. Todd Smith, General Foreman, salary $93,975. Timothy Brennan, Assistant General Foreman, $91,141. And Craig Smith, Motor Equipment Grade 1, $83,022. I'll make the motion if I can get a second.
Second.
All there?
Aye.
Salary modifications for non-union staff for 2023, 2024, and I believe there's some modifications to the salary modifications.
There's 2 corrections, and but otherwise, you don't need to read these unless you feel
I'll
like.
read them all.
Although it would be enjoyable
It
to
would be
listen.
fun. Watch me butcher name after name. Take out to the Smiths.
So the 2 updates, Police Chief Francis Pignatelli, $203,181, and Police Lieutenant Kevin Johnson, $164,847. And those were, I think, detailed out to you earlier.
Are they not on the list? Or
No, they're on the list. They're
But they never
updated,
changed.
the
That's what I
numbers.
got from the
Yep,
email. Okay.
yep. Yeah, those were mistakes on our part, which I said, yeah.
With this many numbers, it's a miracle. You only were 2.
I'll find out the rest of them tomorrow.
As long as it wasn't yours that was wrong.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right.
If no other questions, resolve to modify the annual salaries and hourly rates effective on the dates shown below, effective June 1, 2023, as listed below. I'll make the motion if I can have a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Greenberg regarding the East Irvington Fire Protection District for 2023.
Okay, so.
We're on schedule there.
Yeah, it's amazing, actually. So the village's fire department responds to fire emergency calls in the area of the town of Greenberg that's known as East Irvington, generally up off of Taxter Road in that area. We do that based upon an intermunicipal agreement with Greenberg, where Greenberg and the residents of East Irvington area pay the village a contract amount that's based upon a fairly longstanding and complicated formula, which is in this agreement. And this is for calendar year. We operate on a calendar year basis with the town of Greenberg, which is their budget year. And this agreement for 2023 is for $111,581. And then pursuant to general municipal law, the village of Irvington will then pay the Irvington Fire Company 35% of the amount that the village collects from Greenberg. And all of that is detailed in this resolution, and it's covered by the agreement itself. So, and that's paid to the fire company. In essence, I think the history is probably related to the fact that you're sending volunteers to an area that they didn't sign up to cover, and they're covering it, and they're getting out of bed to go there. So it's a way of benefiting the fire company membership themselves, and they, that's the part of their operations. It's a private organization. So, And it's all authorized by general municipal law.
Whereas the Village of Irvington and Town of Greenberg have reached agreement on a provision of fire protection services for the East Irvington Fire Protection District for the periods January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023. And whereas the payment due from Town of Greenberg under said agreement for 2023, $111,581, now therefore be resolved to authorize the mayor to execute an intermunicipal agreement with the Town of Greenberg regarding the East Irvington Fire Protection District, and further resolved to authorize the clerk treasurer upon receipt of payment from the Town of Greenberg to make a payment of $39,053 to the Irvington Fire Company in accordance with the terms and agreements of their intermunicipal agreement. I don't assume that there's any kind of conflict because I'm technically a member of the fire company. I don't think so.
I mean, if you want to recuse
Maybe I'll
yourself, you
recuse
can.
myself, so if someone else wants to make the motion.
Better safe than sorry, I'll make the motion.
And someone wants to second it? All in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain, just out of an abundance of caution. I don't remember what I did in the last 11 years, but
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't think it-
remember.
I don't think it really matters, but it's.
Yeah. It'll matter if you have three members of the board on the fire department, then we've got a problem. So
Well, I don't
we'll
think-
figure that
I
out.
don't think Greenberg's gonna really change the negotiation anyway, but.
Yeah.
Award of contract 2023-09 for joint village paving.
So this is a project that the Village of Irvington has been coordinating for a number of years now. It's a joint effort between 6 villages, different 6 villages this year than in the past, but 6 villages: Ardsley, Elmsford, Hastings-on-Hudson, Sleepy Hollow, and Tarrytown, along with Irvington. We bid out all of our needs for paving and milling of the roads, and we do that on a joint basis, and it's been a very successful joint effort of sharing of services amongst the village, those villages. And the bids are detailed in the resolution. And this year it's lower than last year in terms of the main rate for asphalt, but that's understandable since the price of oil is down.
Do we have questions on this? I'll start reading. Whereas the Village of Irvington, in a cooperative relationship with the villages of Ardsley, Elmsford, Hastings, Sleepy Hollow, and Tarrytown, has solicited bids for the milling and resurfacing of various streets in the Village of Irvington and partner municipalities referenced above. And whereas a public notice for the project bid was duly advertised on April 7, 2023, and whereas at 11 a.m. on May 3, 2023, Irvington Village Hall, all bids received were opened and summarized below. Contractor Montesano Brothers, Inc.
You just do the total number.
Total base cost, $1,575,079.35. ELQ Industries, $1,612,643.70. Waters Construction Company, $1,753,712. The Morano Brothers Corp., $1,783,457.50. Whereas Village Administrator reviewed the bid submitted and determined that the lowest bidder is in order and responsive to the specifications. Whereas following the unit values bid in the contract, the extended total is based upon the engineer's estimates of the work to be performed in the Village of Irvington. The value of the work is $289,809, and the balance of the contract value for the work appointed by the village, Ardsley, Elmsford, Hastings, Sleepy Hollow, and Tarrytown collectively, summing to $1,285,207.35. And whereas in accordance with the contract, each partner municipality or other municipalities that may be piggybacking this bid separately authorize the contractor responsible for payment of services performed within the respective municipality directed to the contractor. Now therefore be it resolved, the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Irvington hereby awards a contract to the work performed in 2023 milling and resurfacing on the various streets in the Village of Irvington to Montesanto Brothers, Inc. in accordance with their unit prices contained in their bid on May 3rd, 2023. The work to be performed within the Village of Irvington and the other 5 villages, and authorize the village administrator to execute said contract. Was this the same contractor that won it last year, Larry?
Yes.
I will make a motion if I can have a second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
That's a question, Larry, just curious.
Yes, of course.
Do all the villages have to agree, or you just pick the bid?
So they have ceded the right to review the bids and run the bid process, and this is the low bidder that we are choosing. If they somehow disagree, which was not going to happen, but I mean, they don't have to piggyback onto the contract.
Okay.
They can go out to bid on their own, but that's not going to happen. I mean, I mean, you know, not to mention that our engineers have reviewed everything. I send all of that information around to the other villages so they have a chance to see it. If there was any objection, I would have known about it before tonight.
Thank you, just curious.
Yep.
All right. Next is
Approval of village attorney retainer agreement, 2023-17. Do we want to discuss this at all? Mary Ann, did you want to say anything?
I asked for a big increase, $5 an hour.
Yeah, appreciate that. Inflation.
I know,
Not
I
even.
wanted to
Yeah,
do
not
more,
even.
but I know your budget was tight, so. Next year, I'm gonna hit you next year.
Yeah,
Hang on, Lynn, do your clerks get 6 times that rate?
I don't know. I'm gonna stay silent.
Resolved to approve retainer agreement 2023-17 with firm of Specialist Murphy and Lammers LLP, providing for an hourly rate of $170 per hour for the basic retainer services and $225 per hour for services outside the basic retainer. Authorize the mayor to execute said contract. Make the motion if I can get a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we do, obviously appreciate all your hard work, Mary Ann. I know 2022 was probably the year you were most attacked by residents, so we're glad you're back for now.
Oh, that one.
That was a
That was a bad
tough,
one.
like 6 weeks or whatever, it was 8 weeks.
Yeah.
But we really appreciated all of your help on so many things, especially the land use stuff that's complicated. It's been great working with you. You're the only village attorney I've ever worked with, so I don't really have anything to compare it to.
So we think you're really good.
Yeah, so you're definitely the best one I've worked with. Approval of farmer's market manager contract, 2023-19.
So just a quick update on this. So the contract is for the same amount as 2021 for the year June 1st, 22 to May 31st, 23. So the year that's just ending now, it's basically the same amount as what it was the previous year. And then going forward, starting June 1st, 23, the amount is increasing from $45,050 up to $50,000. The basis on that is that the committee came to both Trustee Bard and myself to suggest that the volunteer role in the farmer's market does not need to be as extensive in terms of the operations of the market. We don't need volunteers out there setting up the market, putting the sign out, counting the money before it gets brought over to Village Hall, reconciling all of the lists and details. All of that, the market manager is more than capable of doing. I think there's a desire on the part of the farmers market folks to have that reduced role. The market produces enough revenue to cover it, which is, I know, the main question. And it has produced enough revenue in recent years. It's very successful. My opinion, and I don't know how you'll want to handle it in the future, but I think the farmers market committee, whichever individuals are on it, should still have a role in terms of setting the course of the market and just kind of overall policy of how the market operates. But the day-to-day and week-to-week things don't need to be done by volunteers any longer. So that's the basis for the increase, and the committee suggested it, and we both supported that concept. So.
And just to add to that, the committee, I think most, if not all of the members of the committee are looking to rotate off. That's part of this. So we may need to be doing some outreach to see the next generation of people that want to. Right. It would be a different role, as Larry said. We wouldn't be asking them to go put the sign out on the corner of Main Street and Broadway anymore. But certainly, I think it'd be very important to have community members, involved in what the farmers market does and how it's done.
Resolved to authorize the village administrator to execute an agreement with Pascal Ledrulic to manage the farmers market of the village of Irvington for an annual affiliate fee of $45,050 from June 1st, 2022 to May 31st, 2023, and for an annual fee of $50,000 from June 1st, 2023 to May 31st, 2024. Make a motion if I can get a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of proposal for Broadway existing conditions operational study.
So this is, a little bit of an old item, but this was last talked about earlier in the year, probably February or March, thereabouts. So the study has been updated for the last set of comments that I received going back. I think that was all reported back to the board as far as those updates. The reason for pushing it forward, obviously, is we do want to get this in place and get the study done. There may be a window of time coming up in the next several weeks or even month where If Con Edison does actually get off of East Sunnyside Lane, there may be a window of time where AKRF may want to do some baseline study work. There's a few other factors that they may consider, which is that Mercy College is out of session right now, so that may be an impact. As the mayor pointed out, the seniors are not in class right now at Irvington High School, so maybe that's a factor. So they may ultimately wait until the fall as well, but I want to at least give them the option to start working on things and start moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's important to do it when, when it has the most, like when most people are back.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
I think that senior class not being there is a big
Yeah,
change.
it's just
in
a
the-
lot of people.
It's a huge change just in being able to get onto Riverview Road already.
And I didn't know about that before our conversation, so that I'll make sure that the consultant knows that.
Yeah, it will only be obvious, I think they still need class.
Right,
Mhm.
right. So, and Con Edison is still on East Sunnyside Lane, so it's not,
Hopefully only for
it's
another-
not an issue yet.
Hopefully another 2 weeks.
Yep, hopefully, yeah. It's supposed to be this week, so.
Yeah, that's why I said 2 more.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's important to get this going anyway and let them, I'm curious to see if they found anything with the traffic light settings or whatever. they
Yeah,
went to.
I haven't circled back on that.
That'd be too easy.
Yeah, we fixed everything with this timing, one light.
We're also
Look at it.
having changed the settings.
Look at it
since
flow.
1980.
Yeah, exactly.
$24,000.
It really would. Yeah,
Solve it.
just about 30 seconds. Change everything. Resolved to authorize the village administrator to execute an agreement with AKRF to conduct a Broadway existing conditions operational study for a lump sum of $24,500. I'll make a motion. Looking at a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Next up, approval of consultant agreement 2023-21 with TechGen Vengus Consulting Engineers, PLLC.
So, Tejan Venegas, that's the,
Tejan Venegas,
Tejan. So that's, this is an agreement, fairly, our standard consulting agreement. And it's been modified a little bit to conform with the agreement that we now have with Han Engineering. It's more of a, what I would call a blanket contract or a perpetual contract where there's no expiration, and it's not for a specific project. We currently have a project now that we need them to work on, as we talked about at the work session last week, which is the theater HVAC project. So they have some consulting work that we'll be moving them forward on shortly. But they also are doing work at the senior center on the HVAC project there. And we expect them to be overseeing the construction work that's going on over the course of the summer. So again, this is a kind of a blanket consulting agreement. They have the right to, it's set at a certain set of hourly rates, and they have the right to update those once a year.
How do you say it? Say it again.
Tejan Venegas.
Okay. Resolved to approve a consulting agreement 2023-21 with Tejan Venegas Consulting Engineers, PLLC, for professional engineering services and to authorize the village administrator to execute said contract. Make a motion. Looking at a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next up is approval to submit an application to the USDA Urban and Community Forestry Grant Program.
Did you email us this?
I did.
Okay.
It's just in case.
All right, so this grant application is a federal grant application, and it's an urban and community forestry application specifically related to the Inflation Reduction Act from Washington. This project puts together 3 communities, the villages of Hastings-on-Hudson, Village of Dobbs Ferry, and Irvington. We explored the idea with Tarrytown, but it didn't look like they had the specific need. So the 3 villages that we expect will be putting in this grant application. It is intended to, in the case of Irvington, to directly address all of the recommendations that are in the Community Forestry Management Plan that was just adopted last year, I guess it was. There's upwards of $165,000 worth of work that was identified that needs to be done in the Irvington Woods. And that's over and above the hazardous tree removal that the department has already undertaken. But this would finish that out, as well as all the other measures that are contained in that report. So it's the right size project for this type of a grant. This federal grant has a minimum of $100,000 with a maximum, I think, of 2 million, or, considerably larger than what we would need. So it looks like it's a good opportunity. I think they provided us with, and all the applicants, with far less time to prepare our grant application than it really deserves. The announcement came out in late April, and it's due June 1st, which is a very short amount of time to coordinate 3 municipalities. So that's why you didn't have a resolution attached to the agenda, frankly. This was typed up at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. So I did explain it to Joe what the project was. He didn't have a lot of input in this. I think and because of the timing, but I think he understands that all we're trying to do here is execute on the community forestry management plan that you spent grant money to create, and we're trying to complete it. And Hastings has their own laundry list, and Dobbs has a list as well. That's it.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So I guess, so if we get $100,000, then we would put $100,000, right? Or
It's a 50-50 match.
okay.
The one thing, though, is that in-kind services are allowed to be used as a match. And because you employ a full-time employee at the Irvington Woods, and then there'll be other administrative people helping with this grant, in the case of CJ, you have a pretty good opportunity to have in-kind services to be put up, and it's really not extra cash out of your pocket. It's a salaried employee. So it's exactly that, in kind. So I think we have an opportunity to leverage even more than 50-50 on this grant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we would have the time in CJ's time to do that, because it's part of already what we sort of envision happening in the woods.
Yeah, I mean, when the community forestry management plan was completed, that's in the realm of the Parks Department to complete. The problem is we don't have the funding to do it. We've done what we could with the staff that we have and with some money during the year. But the goal has been to search out grant funding to help offset that and complete that. So look, it's a challenge. His time, and we've heard it plenty of times, I'm sure, his time is stretched in multiple directions, and we need to balance this out. But I think this is an opportunity, if we're lucky enough to get it, to leverage 50% or more of outside funds to complete this work.
Can I ask another question about this? Would there be an opportunity, sort of similar to what we did when we did our priorities list? Remember with the GPTL, we went through what their short-term, medium, and long-term goals were and projects. I think maybe we need a similar approach with the woods, where we, the things that are short-term, medium-term, and long-term, right? If that's an issue of time, of his time, or.
As it relates to the tasks that are being contemplated for this, or in total for his?
In total, well, I'm imagining that if you get this grant, this would be this would move up the scale of priorities, because you'd have some funding for it.
Yeah, no, that's true, but I think the work that needs to be done is not all on the shoulders of him as staff person.
Right.
There'll be a significant amount of work that's being done by an outside contractor with oversight from him. So I don't think this is something that monopolizes his time.
I guess
But I understand,
I'm just trying to get a sense of, this is something that's, I guess what I'm trying to think of, I'm assuming, since we're gonna try to get the grant, that this is obviously something that can be managed and worked into the schedule. Okay.
Yep.
Just trying to get that understanding.
Resolved to authorize the submission of an application for funding to the USDA Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Inflation Reduction Act grant program for a project cost up to $225,000, including local match up to $137,000. And further resolved to authorize the village administrator to sign all documents necessary to effectuate this resolution. I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next up is reports of boards, standing committees, and officers, trustee liaison reports.
All right. Got a nice report from Alan from the Tree Preservation Commission. The TPC is continuing to work with the DPW to upgrade the trees on Main Street. The DPW begins construction of 3 new tree wells between South Cottonette and South Buckout Streets next week. Metal grates will be installed in the new wells, and pink flare cherry trees will be planted once the tree wells are complete. Pink flare cherry is the same variety of tree that bloomed so beautifully on Main Street between Ferris and Ecker back in April. Also, 2 new existing tree wells between Dutcher and Cottonette are getting new pink flare cherry trees. So Main Street will have 5 more spring blooming trees next year. This year, Arbor Day was celebrated by planting a little leaf linden on North Ferris. It's a beautiful spring flowering tree that should enhance the streetscape opposite the entrance to Town Hall and the Irvington Theater. Applications for removal, permits, and replant agreements are all on pace with previous years. That is it.
Great. Larry?
Thanks to everyone who played a role in the 10th anniversary celebration at the O'Hara Nature Center this weekend. It was a great day. Of course, CJ and his team, including the Irvington Girl Scouts, were great. 2023 Irvington Day Camp registration is still ongoing. There were 225 campers already registered. The department is accepting group permit requests for Matheson and Scenic Hudson Park. Permit applications are available online. Parks are getting heavy use, so if you want to ensure a spot with tables and grills, please make a reservation. 15 senior citizens were treated to hair and nail visits along with a lunch. The event was paid for by an anonymous individual. In addition, our seniors will be visiting the Ribeiro Winery tomorrow. Community Advisory Board will meet tomorrow, 8 a.m. at the Senior Center. Irvington Woods Committee will meet this Thursday, May 18th at 7 p.m. at the O'Hara Nature Center. The Recreation Parks Advisory Committee will meet on Wednesday, May 24th, 7 p.m. in the Rec Center. And don't forget, there are ways to donate to the Irvington Woods Park and to Rocktoberfest online. Contact the Rec Department for links, and sponsorships for Rocktoberfest are now being accepted. Contact Joe.
That's it?
That's it.
All right. Mitch?
It's 9:31, so I'm gonna start a lengthy report. No, just kidding. It's important. So tomorrow is the school board, the
Yes.
budget and the school board election. I had a nice meeting with the library board president and librarian. A lot of positive things happening, and farmers market, you guys are
Okay, so the DPW, continuing their biannual catch basin cleaning, repairing sidewalks and responding and clearing fallen trees. I guess we've had a long meeting. And they're continuing in conjunction with Greenberg DPW, jet and clean drainage lines on the Cyrusville Road. And also it's in conjunction with the Tree Commission, removing hazardous trees and trimming trees encroaching on residents' property. Ryan, you talked about the unveiling on June 10th.
Yeah.
Yes, but I also wanted to mention that in anticipation of the statue being installed, there's going to be a session in the library on June 1st in the evening, and which is how do we talk about our hard history? So especially for parents who want to kind of find out how to, or just sort of brainstorm and think about how to talk about that piece of art with their children. A local resident, Ingie Sullivan, is going to be having a talk in the library on June 1st, which I think people should definitely attend. We did one last year and it was excellent. A good resource for parents.
All right. Now, the one other thing I'll add is that there is a meeting to kick off the Pride planning at 7 p.m. on Zoom on this Wednesday. If someone's interested and they're still listening to this, first, God bless you. Secondly, it's open to anybody that wants to join, and just let Larry or myself know. Yeah, exactly. But so I guess we still need to set out that Zoom.
I'll send out the link. Yeah, it's all
Whoever's
been.
interested, I don't know if there anyone's
Actually, I think it was in the email I sent to
It was, yeah,
interested
that's the only
people.
thing
Yeah,
I got back.
I'll send a reminder anyway. Yep.
I do want to say we're limited to 2 people, so people don't think that we're not interested.
Right. Village administrator's report.
So just a brief brief report. I had a meeting along with several of our department heads with the New York State Department of Transportation, the project manager in charge of the repaving of Broadway. And so I think what we could safely say is that the project won't be done very quickly. They're still waiting to complete, I guess, paving and whatever they're doing over on 9A. And then they can move over and work on Route 9, which is going to be from Hastings up to Tarrytown, I believe. So there may be some work in the next, couple of months where they start working out in the road and fixing some catch basins and doing some of those types of things. But the actual paving is probably pretty far off. And as I hear more about dates, I'll certainly let everyone know. And they also are now dependent on, they're pushing Con Edison to get their upgrades done in Broadway. So that includes Main Street and Fargo Lane and some other intersections where they have to complete some work before the paving happens. So it's all an intertwined mess.
Well, at least they're working together.
Well, yeah, they are. We'll leave it at that.
So there's other from village clerk treasurer,
No other updates.
village attorney?
No.
I do have one person on.
Comment?
Yeah, hold on one second. Karen Schatzel.
Thank you. It is, I'll keep this brief, but I just wanted to share an interesting historical fact that none of you young people would know anything about except perhaps Mayor Smith. And that's that in just between Villa Lawaro and Abbott House, there is a link. And back in the 1990s, when Peter Oley was trying to resurrect the Historical Society after a hiatus of about 20 years when there was no Historical Society, we had meetings in Adele Warnock's house. And of course, you would remember Adele Warnock, Mayor, would you not?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway, one of the first programs that we had, because there was no appropriate auditorium anyplace, we invited Alelia Bundles, who of course was the great-granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker. And we had the program up at Abbott House because I was serving on the board at Abbott House, and I persuaded them, even though the auditorium was pretty shabby in those days, but she was a speaker there. So anyway, after the program, Peter Oley had to apologize to Alelia Bundles that we didn't even have enough money in the treasury of the Historical Society in those days to give her an honorarium. So Ms. Bundles came and was the speaker and helped us get the Historical Society off the ground, but she didn't even get an honorarium. So in any case, the next time she's in town, I hope that we'll find a way that we can give her some kind of an honorarium just for such
interest. Plus interest, yeah.
Here we're gonna have to float a bond.
That's all I wanted to say.
I did not know that, Karen.
To listen to these two
We're learning a
programs
lot.
really were.
So much.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You want?
One more?
Yeah, one other, Gloria Leahy.
Okay. Hello, Gloria.
Hi. I've never watched a meeting before because I'm the mother of a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. I've been really busy. And I just really quickly wanted to thank you for your time and then also say that I have lived on Broadway at Irvington Gardens for 6 years. And I wanted to speak up with my support for the Route 9 Complete Streets Design Project. I think it's a huge opportunity to make Broadway safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers. And as I said, I'm a resident of Irvington Gardens. I live across from the stretch of Broadway that has 4 lanes. And as a pedestrian, it's extremely scary to cross the 4 lanes of traffic over to the one and only sidewalk, especially with a stroller. So I would be much more inclined to walk to the village of Irvington with my children and to ride my bicycle on the aqueduct if Broadway is safer. And then I also did have a question because I noticed that earlier in the meeting that the correspondence regarding this project will be passed on to a committee who is handling it. And I'm just wondering if I'm allowed to ask what the name of the committee is?
So I'm not actually sure what they're calling themselves. They were, I know their website that they use is called route9active.org. So it was the active transportation Route 9 corridor study that they helped initiate, and the villages executed on it. So that website has all of the reports that were generated from that study, and the folks that were involved in pushing for that report to be done are now still together as a committee trying to advocate for complete streets, just like you were doing. So I'm happy to, if you feel free to send me maybe a quick email. My name is Larry Shopfer, village administrator. If you want to send me a quick note, I can connect you. I can connect you with the right person on that committee if you'd like.
Sure, I just noticed that the mayor handed over the actual, we had some written correspondence that he handed to one of the trustees earlier tonight.
It was attached to the agenda. There were some notes that were written to the board, and the board just acknowledged them as correspondence. So we'll make sure that they get pushed over to the committee, so the committee knows that that the correspondence came in.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks for sticking on until 20 to 10.
It's really important to me. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Karen has her hand up.
Okay.
I don't think it's left over, so let's see. Karen?
She's muted.
It might be a mistake. I'm not sure.
It's not like her.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think we have any action items.
Only that, hold on. Only that I'll be doing a reminder about the Pride meeting on Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah. And other than that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Yeah,
We all second that.
Anything that lets us go home.
I think you have a unanimous second on that.
And so moved, voting on every